Sword of Coming Chapter 1132. The young man who looked like a white cloud returned to the Tongyin ferry and saw the girl in the mink hat squatting by the ladder at the bow. Cui Dongshan smiled and asked, "Is Mr. Xie squatting in the pit or blocking me?" Xiego was too lazy to get up. He put his hand to his mouth and asked, "Sect Master Cui, can you really show that Qingmi a path to harmony? Didn't you trick him?" Cui Dongshan then squatted down and sighed, "My family tradition is to treat people with sincerity. If you say it is between 5 and 5, it is half and half, and I will never deceive others." Cui Dongshan groaned and threw down his sleeves. "I am the leader of the sect, and my face is more valuable than gold." Xiego is doubtful. Cui Dongshan seemed to have realized it later, with a look of horror on his face. How did Xie Zishi know such a secret? Could it be that Taoist fellow Qingmi and I were standing side by side watering water at the corner of the alley when we saw no one around? I was also looked at the meeting? I'm just a young man. If this spreads out, how will I see anyone in the future? Xiego grinned and said, "It's not like shit, what's there to see?" Cui Dongshan took a breath of air, and treated each other with admiration after 3 days of separation. Xie Zishi had only been practicing in Luapa Mountain for a few days, and his chatting skills had skyrocketed. Pei Qian was walking on the bow of the boat and said, "It's nothing more than success or failure, it's just half and half." Xiego looked confused. Huh? Can you still cause trouble like this? Could it be that he has become a fake mountain of desolation? Oh, I remember Jing Dafeng said that sect leader Cui is now a member of the Qingping sword sect, so he threw water out of the way so we won't kiss him. Pei Qian said, "It's not all a lie." Since Senior Qingmi didn't hear the implication of Master Huolong's words, the younger brother had no choice but to help. Cui Dongshan stretched out his hands and gave a thumbs up. "The person who knows me best is Senior Sister." Xiego's expression remained the same. Huh? Pei Qian could only patiently explain, "Senior Qingmi is the kind of Ascension Realm monk who has lost his spirit. He has completely given up on the 14th realm. He thinks that his qualifications and opportunities are not as good as those who are stronger in Ascension. In fact, this kind of state of mind is the true state of mind. Let Senior Qingmi's road to Ascension come to an end. If the big white goose tells you Feng Shuatao, there is still a chance. Feng Shuatao may not be willing to believe it. This is why the big white goose said, 'The Taoist heart is tough enough.' It was actually a pun. In this case, big white goose used a convenient method. In short, it was to let Feng Shuatao raise his heart again. There is hope, even if it is still slim, but yesterday's Feng Shuatao and tomorrow's Feng Shuatao will change. It's very different. In a sense, it can be said that Feng Shuatao has already embarked on the path of harmony at that moment. In addition, Big White Goose knows a lot of things, and it is of course beneficial for them to learn from each other's Taoism. Xiego suddenly said, I have learned, how can I still do things like this?" Cui Dongshan held the back of his head with both hands and chuckled, "After the heavy rain, it is indeed much easier to merge with the road, but the 14th realm is not like cabbage with yellow mud on the roadside." Xiego frowned, "It's really difficult to break the situation, and it's really sad to be worried." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "That's why I said just now that Feng Shuatao is expected to join Taoism, and Xie Zishi has murderous intentions towards fellow Taoist Qingmi. Am I right?" Xiego admitted the matter openly, "It's instinctive. There's nothing I can do about it, but I can control it." Pei Qian smiled and said, "That's good." Cui Dongshan echoed, "Yes, our Xie Zishi is such an excellent Taoist talent. It is easy to learn anything. The harder it is, the faster we learn. There is still some room for improvement in sharpening our Taoist heart. I am a spectator. Those who are anxious are scratching their heads and ears, and they are really envious." Xiego asked Pei Qian directly, "Isn't the big white goose swearing? If you stay in Luolu Mountain for a long time, you will find that many words have a strange appeal that others can learn quickly and become addicted to. For example, the nickname Big White Goose." Pei Qian said, "Whether it's cynicism, carrying a gun or a stick, or a shady and weird attitude, I can't tell the truth." Cui Dongshan said helplessly, "Conscience of heaven and earth, don't wrongly accuse good people." Xiego waved his hand, "No problem, just take it as a good word." Cui Dongshan clasped his hands behind his back, walked around in circles, winked and said, "Shouldn't everyone in Tonggishao hope the Jiang sect master of the Jade Gui sect can one day join the Tao? Aquarius continent, doesn't everyone owe it to them? Am I the 14th realm? Shouldn't all the demon Qigong practitioners in the entire wild world hope that my husband will reach the 14th realm? Hey, it doesn't seem to be the case. Do you think it's strange?" Xiego thought for a while and frowned, "What are you talking about?" It's none of my business. Chui Dongshan immediately imitated the millet grains. Pei Qian rolled his eyes, childish. Xiego left in a big way and Pei Qian wanted to go back to the house to practice boxing. Chui Dongshan called senior sister and started to hesitate. Pei Qian stopped and asked strangely, "What's wrong?" Chui Dongshan smiled and said, "Do you prefer the old Xiao Haitan or the current Pei Qian?" Pei Qian was silent for a moment and said, "I really didn't like the ignorant me before." Chui Dongshan said softly, "Anyway, my husband and I will often think of the old Xiao Haitan." Pei Qian smiled and said, "Did master tell you that?" Chui Dongshan shook his head and said, "No need to say. Regarding Pei Qian's growth, it seems that he is very happy and sad about it. Probably because I like Mr. Li, who is good at reasoning, but found that there was really no reason to explain this mood, so he had no choice but to remain silent. Just like a child jumping up and down, he turns into a big girl in the blink of an eye." After chatting some polite words and casual remarks, Qin Pingan returned to the ferry, walked towards them and asked with a smile, "What are you talking about?" The two of them spoke almost at the same time. The student said, "Senior sister wanted to drink secretly but I stopped her." The apprentice said, "Big white goose and xianxia don't talk well." Qin Pingan smiled and nodded, saying very good, raised his hands and rewarded each with a chestnut. Chui Dongshan asked, "Sir, are you going back to Luapa Mountain?" Qin Pingan said, "First I went to Wudong Mountain in Qingtong. I gave me a few Wudong leaves for free. I had to come to express my gratitude. Then I went to Qinghu Palace and had a drink with Mr. Lu. After that I went back home and continued to visit. Practice at Fiolu Dojo." Chui Dongshan said, "Sir, you don't have to be so patient every time you go down the mountain. After all, going to Wudong Mountain is not just for that couple. The so-called smooth way does not mean that the master and disciple don't have to feel that they owe someone a favor. A little bit of patience on our part may determine the joys and sorrows of many people we meet. How dare we be impatient, right?" Qin Pingan stretched out his hand to hold Chui Dongshan's head and continued, "It is because I met many patient people on the road that Qin Pingan is what he is today." Pei Qian hummed. Chui Dongshan sighed, "The sky is big and the earth is big, sir, is the biggest. Everything you said is right." Qin Pingan said, "I finally figured something out." Seeing that the opportunity was not good, Chui Dongshan ran away quickly, but Qin Pingan reached out to hold his head and said with a smile, "There is no need to feel guilty or run away." Pei Qian thought for a while and was about to leave. The master and the junior brother must have a serious conversation, and it would be a big deal. However, Qin Pingan signaled to Pei Qian not to move and said to them in his heart, "If I don't give an answer to a certain question before, someone will have to wait for the answer like you." Chui Dongshan said dully, "This is the old bastard's intention. I haven't thought about it for a few days." Qin Pingan joked, "So senior brother protecting my Taoism is equivalent to giving me an amulet invisibly. What do you, a student, feel guilty about?" The name of this amulet can probably be called Answer, which is about right and wrong, about process and result. Sword cultivator Qin Pingan is on the road of life. In the process of drawing talismans to find answers, Chui Dongshan is waiting patiently, and Zhou Zi is watching from the sidelines. Chui Dongshan muttered in a low voice, "The old doesn't bring toilet paper with him when he goes to the toilet." Qin Pingan laughed angrily and said, "Don't talk nonsense." Chui Dongshan asked, "It's okay anyway, why don't we have another session?" Qin Pingan said, "I don't care. Anyway, the amount of alcohol is there. What does Pei Qian say?" Pei Qian said, "My drinking capacity is average and I can't compare to master, and my wine quality is also ranked second." Chui Dongshan's eyes widened. "Xiao Haitan, what do you mean, in the only one who dares to be the last in both worlds?" They returned to the wine table and Qin Pingan wanted to cook in person. He also said that Feng Zuido's cooking skills were sincere and not unusual. Pei Qian sat and waited, closing his eyes and concentrating, his eyebrows soft. Chui Dongshan was lying on the table, yawning and shouting that he wanted to drink or eat meat. After tonight's dinner, the students and apprentices did not favor the husband and master. Instead, the senior sister and the junior senior brother worked together to get the one who drank the most and drank the best drunk. It seems that Qin Pingan told some interesting stories about being a kiln worker's apprentice. Big White Goose talked about some embarrassing things about being locked up and forced to study when he was young, and Little Haitan talked about some fun things about wandering around the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom when he was a child. Xiego felt that she was now a high-ranking official with a broad mind and a strong spirit, so she wanted to win over the two local sword cultivators from the Sword Chi Great Wall, but was rejected. She returned angrily but discouraged. I went there again and tried to persuade the two sword fairies. Now that we are half family members, we had no enmity before, so there is no reason for our relationship to be stiff. The old woman listened to the chatter outside the door and began to chase people away with words. The girl in the mink hat made a face, knocked the door and walked away in a big way. She walked in the corridor and muttered something in a low voice, Jade Poo Realm Sword Immortal ba ba ba. The old man in the room, who deliberately kept a straight face, almost didn't laugh out loud, but the old woman stood up immediately with a gloomy face, opened the door and angrily shouted, "Don't you dare say it again." As a result, the girl in the mink hat ran away long ago. The old man thought that his relationship with the girl was completely over, but he never thought that the old woman closed the door gently, returned to her seat, her face softened, she twitched her lips and smiled. The old man stared blankly at the old woman. She suddenly became angry and slapped the table. "What are you looking at? Old pervert, keep your eyes open." The old man was speechless. He could only curse in his heart. He was not young anymore. He had no self-awareness anymore. He could afford to buy a mirror. But somehow the old woman seemed to hear what the old man was saying. "You bad old man, you can't buy it? Put up a mirror, right?" The old man grinned and left the house. At the corner of the corridor, the girl in the mink hat said with a smile, "Sword fairy Xingyun, she has such a bad temper. What do you like a woman like this to do?" The old man said angrily, "I'm happy to." Xiego laughed and said, "Yes." Xingyun was a little puzzled and couldn't help but ask, "The two worlds are starting to fight, and you don't even want to help the wilderness just to come here to talk about love?" Xiego asked, "My true body is that of a young man, but I pretend to have the appearance of an old man. The sunset is infinitely beautiful. Isn't it fun?" Xingyun became angry with embarrassment and was about to scold him back, but Xiego started to stab him in the heart one after another. "This old boy has such a bad mouth. He didn't rinse his mouth after eating shit. No wonder Lu Shui doesn't like chatting with you. Take it easy, me sword immortal is much prettier than you. Are you men only allowed to covet beauty while women don't like handsome men? Me Jianxian is so eye-catching? What's more, he is a genuine sword immortal. He is not the same as your Yupu sword immortal. So much the same." Xingyun was so angry that the girl in the mink hat stood against the wall, stretched out her fingers and started to pick her nostrils. "You're a swordsman, you're a coward and a coward, your swordsmanship is poor, and you're even less courageous." The old woman came here, her face was livid and she yelled angrily, "Bai Jing, shut up." Xiego put his hands on his hips and began to pose. "How unreasonable, the ordinary offerings of the lower sect, but you are so ignorant of etiquette when you see the second offering of the upper sect? I am very popular on Luolu Mountain. When you two go there in the future, be careful not to eat it. Just walk around, don't say you didn't predict what you said." Xingyun and Lu Shui were both very angry at first, but when they confronted the girl in the mink hat and heard such official talk, they felt extremely awkward. The key opponent is still the legendary Bai Jing, who handed over his sword whenever he disagreed. Xiego walked backwards in the corridor as if he was stern and was reminding me, "A gentleman should always speak his words and fight with words rather than force. I'm afraid you will blackmail me for money." The old woman sneered in her heart and said, "You should ask her about swordsmanship. When you were young, who was saying all day long that one day in the future, you would have to fight against the Ascension Realm demon." Xingyun said aggrievedly, "It's better to quarrel with her. After all, Bai Jing's pile of unused Taoist numbers were not given to her by someone kindly. I heard that when concubine Fei saw Bai Jing, she had to call her the patriarch according to her seniority, right? But the reason why there was no fight was actually because they all knew very well that the girl in the mink hat, who had a mouth that looked like she had eaten arsenic, had no ill intentions toward them. After thanking the dog for leaving, he put his hands behind his back, turned his nostrils to the sky, raised his shoulders and whistled. One is waiting for the other person to express his feelings, and the other feels that the other person knows his feelings. Don't say anything, just keep it for food. Is it delicious if it turns into sour rice? Alas, it was up to her, an outsider, to act as a villain to help them, and to pierce this layer of window paper. As the second-ranking minister in Luolu Mountain, I have nothing to say and must be promoted. The reason why Bai Jing risked the world's disapproval and left the wilderness was to do 3 things. Go to Luapa Mountain to find Xiaoma, recover the Golden Crow in Aquarius Continent, and meet Pei Qian by the way. This time Xiego left Luapa Mountain because of 2 serious things. The first thing was of course that Xiao Mo was not here, so she had to take on the responsibility of protecting the mountain owner. The second thing was that Xiego noticed the presence of Tongyi's Hao. There was a very familiar ancient atmosphere, but Xiego didn't want to reminisce with her for the time being. there is another new thing. Xiego is still hesitating whether to tell the mountain master that the old blind man who has nothing to pursue in the world, fellow Taoist priest of the temple, wants to go to heaven. Xiego remembered asking before, "Mountain master, do you really remember those place names or did you just make them up when you wrote them?" Qin Pingan replied, "I have a good memory since I was a child. The place names of those places are indeed the roads I have traveled. The mountains are stretching, but in the summer the main peak is covered with heavy snow. It is Wutong Mountain where the Patriarch Hall is located. Looking from a distance, the mountain looks like a silvery glazed world." Xiego smiled and said, "This is also it's so beautiful. At first glance it looks like a place where monsters practice." Qin Pingan was sitting on a stone in a stream of a tributary of a large river, fishing with fishing rods made from local materials. Xiego followed him on this trip, and compared to the past, the girl in the mink hat obviously paid more attention to the inconspicuous scenery and local customs in various places. Qin Pingan joked, "You are about to become a very good friend of mine." Xiego laughed loudly, knowing that it was Brother Su, the bearded hero who opened a martial arts school in Xianyu County. Qin Pingan was helpless as his relationship with Xiao Mili was indeed good. Xiego squatted aside, holding his chin with his hands and asked casually, "When do you plan to refine the 5-color soil that Taoist Chunyang gave you?" Qin Pingan said, "Let's go back to Fuyao Foot. Don't worry. Anyway, the soil from Izhou and Wuyue sent by the Dali Imperial Court has not been refined yet." Xiego smiled and said, "I heard that Tong Shanjun helped me a little bit?" Qin Pingan asked doubtfully, "Does Xiaomi Li even know this?" Xiego said, "I heard the news myself from Wei Yao. There is a rumor circulating in the offices of Piyun Mountain that the Xia people are driving up prices and are unethical and did not communicate with the other gods beforehand. This has affected the chiefs of the other 4 mountains who are in charge of the 5-color soil. Need to work on a temporary basis. What's more, when it comes to the mountains, those who think of gods as immortals and smoke dry cigarettes have dark hearts." Qin Pingan smiled and said nothing. Xiego said, "I often go there secretly to relax. I don't agree with the etiquette. It's not very good. Why don't the mountain master say a few words?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Just pretend you don't know. Just pretend you didn't say it and I didn't hear it." Xiego asked, "Besides a few bags of Dayue 5-colored earth, what other treasures did Chunyang Taoist give you?" Qin Pingan said, "In short, it can help me work with the 5 elements natal objects to almost reach a point where I can't break the bottleneck. The immortal realm has finished the things of the ascension realm." Xiego praised, "It's a big deal. If you lay the foundation in the early stage and then add more bricks and stones, you will get twice the result with half the effort." Qin Pingan said, "Master Huolong reminded me not to always think about pursuing killing power. Cultivating the Tao is cultivating the Tao. If you are too ambitious and eager to eat tofu, it will easily burn your mouth." Xiego asked, "So Lu Yan's talk of favors is due to Old Master's insinuation? Does Old Master want you to help Lu Yan protect the way, practice your skills, and reciprocate in the future to help his proud disciple protect the way?" Qin Pingan laughed endlessly, "I think it's really possible." Xiego said, "I heard from Xiao Mili that the mountain master has known each other for a long time, the chivalrous swordsman Su Yuanxia, and the Taoist priest Zhang Shanfeng with cool sleeves?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "We met when we were unknown, and the 3 of us walked through the world together. But at that time, traveling in the world was more worthy of the name and we had fun in hardship. Every time we had a drink, we had to weigh our money bags carefully. I always felt that we had walked through the world together. It's a long, long way. It's not like today where you can travel leisurely. As long as you want to go fast, you can see thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in a blink of an eye, and you don't have to worry about the price of drinking." Xiego sighed, "It's great to know a few close friends when I was young and can be lifelong friends. I envy them." Passing by some monks, they saw a man and a woman fishing by the river, and they began to speak fluently. Although the voice was not loud, the content was indeed a bit unpleasant. How could the skinny ones be chewy? The guy next to him must be a foodie. Of tender grass. Xiego whispered, "Mountain Master, how am I doing now? If things had been in the past, haha, I would have turned into ashes in the blink of an eye." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "I have a good temper now, but I was also very capable before." Xiego imitated the big white goose and shook his fists a few times. "If you give me a prize, please give me a prize." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "You can learn something from Sect Master Chui." If Qin Pingan hadn't stopped her, Xiego would have worn a long-sleeved robe when she went out this time. She felt that she looked more majestic when walking. Qin Pingan said curiously, "It seems that I have never heard you mention the grudges and hatreds in the past years of practicing Taoism. When I occasionally chat with Xiaomo, he always talks vaguely." Xiego said cheerfully, "There is nothing to talk about. I practice all by myself and work alone, so no Taoist priests were kind to me in the early years. I don't like to complain or grumble, and I occasionally suffer a few losses. Just knock out your teeth and swallow blood. As for those who have reason to blame me and hate me, they can't complain. You know it well, Lord of the Mountain. My old masters who had the reputation of eating ashes are all dead. Those who are alive among the earth immortals, those who can't beat me don't dare to blame me at all, because they are afraid that I will steal their Taoist title. Of course, the Taoist priests who can't beat me don't have to blame me. As for enemies, I don't have any enemies." For later generations of women, it was better for Beijing to go out to dress up and change clothes. Every time she left the ashram and walked alone in the world, she would directly change her alias. Xiego said 3 words about grudges and hatred, but deliberately ignored them. The remaining word, love, was of course given to Xiaomo. It's like a love letter that lasts a long time but doesn't have many words. Xiego said abruptly, "Qing Tong caused such a big fight, but ended up accepting such junk goods that can't be brought to the table? Master of the Mountain, don't let us Luapa Mountain be implicated. After all, it's you who can make Wudong Mountain a sect. Help me deliver the results to the Confucian Temple. When the time comes, I have to talk to Qing Tong, but don't stop me." Qin Pingan said slowly, "It can be taught. No matter how lazy Qing Tong is, he still loves feathers. As long as he is willing to teach, be patient, and exercise more restraint, it will be a different situation. Take your time." Xiego asked, "What if Qing Tongjiao is not good?" Qin Pingan said, "There is still Dafu Academy watching. Thank you, dog." Although it was not the only way to go to Zushan, a group of monks passed by this place soon. One of them, Jiao Didi, asked, "The white hill in front is Wudong Mountain?" Xiego rolled his eyes and shook his head. The prodigal hooves who knew what they were asking had huge breasts. Qin Pingan just stared at the water and said, "No." Xiego couldn't help laughing. The female cultivator smiled brightly, rolled her eyes at the green-shirt figure and said, "You handsome man with funny words, we may be from the same school in the future. Remember to take care of each other." Qin Pingan's answer can be described as concise and concise. "No." Xiego laughed heartily. The group of demon monks who had gone to Wudong Mountain to try their luck found this conversation more interesting, and they all laughed and left. At first, when the local demon monks in Tongya continent heard about this, they thought it was a trap carefully designed by some daring person to deceive them. Later, both Jade Guizhong and Pushun passed the Shanshui Di newspaper to prove that Wudong Mountain was the sect's first immortal mansion appointed by the Confucian Temple. But the demon clan, who have become accustomed to being frightened over the years, are still cautious and choose to maintain a wait-and-see attitude, not daring to approach the sycamore tree casually. When I learned that Qing Longzhou, the chief of Dafu Academy who was born in Laojiao, was willing to climb the mountain in person to congratulate him, I began to trust Wudong Mountain. The academy has also set a rule that allows the demon monks to go to the nearby Shanshui God's mansion that has been enshrined by the imperial courts of various countries to receive a special customs certificate temporarily issued by the academy. It is also strictly forbidden for the monks from various countries along the way to stop them from going to Wudong Mountain. If there is a dispute, the academy will handle it personally. Only then did I feel completely relieved. Noisy rush over there. I was afraid that I would be late and not have a warm meal, as there would be no seats at the Wutangshan Patriarch Hall. Those who have come here recently have more or less the barbarian aura unique to the demon clan. Those who are at a lower level are even more fishy, and there are even some who have not yet fully refined themselves. Fortunately, we met each other in this world. We were not surprised at all but felt close to each other. Xiego asked curiously, "What did Qing Tong think?" He just changed his Taoist name to Qingyu and claimed to the public that he was only in the Jade Pu realm. Since he chose to establish a sect in an upright way, why did he lower his identity and pretend to be a Jade Pu realm? "Didn't you take off your pants and fart?" Qin Pingan explained, "Qing Tong is very interested in establishing a sect, but he doesn't have much confidence in how to handle the affairs of the sect. He is more worried that once the number of genealogy monks increases over time, he will get used to having an Ascension Realm monk as the sect leader. Environment, he was afraid that people's hearts would be insufficient, and he yearned for the state of unpredictable emperor's heart, so he came up with a step-by-step trick. First of all, a young Yupu who was born out of the blue is not light in his own right. The demon clan Qi practitioner can still get the nod from the Confucian Temple to establish a sect in Tonggishao. from the perspective of others, there must be something interesting here which is intriguing. Secondly, Qingtong only needs 100 or 200 years before he can claim to be in seclusion again. Successfully emerged from seclusion and became an immortal, which is enough to prove that he is a promising young sect leader, and then? Xiego said first, then after 100 years Qingtong pretends to be in the Ascension realm? No, this is not a pretense. After thinking for a moment, Xiego asked, is this the truth that Jing Qing said, don't set your tone too high when doing things? Chen Pingan turned his head and looked at the girl in the mink hat. I thought you were starting to learn from Chen Lingjun how to behave in the world? Xiego asked in confusion. What's wrong? Chen Pingan turned his head to look at the river again and let her go. Xiego continued the previous topic. But according to this process, won't Qingtong's secrets be revealed in 500 or 600 years? He will have to become an Ascension Realm sect master. Chen Pingan said, who said you can achieve enlightenment and ascend in just one retreat? It's normal to fail once or twice. Xiego's eyes widened. Qingtong, this is more extreme than taking off his pants and farting, it's just pooping without taking off his pants. I understand, Qingtong has such a dirty mind that he came up with such a harmful trick. Damn it, I used to think he was an ignorant idiot. Well, it turns out that even I was deceived. Maybe he couldn't reach the 14th realm on purpose? Maybe he's already the 14th realm? No, I have to ask him face to face. If he is still not honest and dares not to acknowledge the 14th realm, I will ask Jian to reveal his true colors. Chen Pingan smiled and said, is it possible that you misunderstood Qingtong? Maybe there is some advice from an expert? Of course, I also guessed. Xiego was not fooling around in Luo Mountain for nothing. He immediately changed his words and said, what a clever trick, it must be someone behind the scenes who is giving guidance. Chen Pingan was speechless for a moment. Good guy, you will soon learn the advantages of everyone in Luo Mountain. Xiego said something with emotion for no reason. For those who practice Taoism, when they look at the ordinary masters at the foot of the mountain, it seems that it is difficult to treat them as human beings, and it is also difficult for them to treat themselves as human beings. In short, it is difficult for the former to regard the latter as the same kind. It was obvious that Xiego would not regard Qingtong and those monsters who refine the human form as comrades. Chen Pingan didn't say anything about this, but just tried to persuade him for no reason. Over there in Luolu Mountain, you don't have to be polite and polite. No one treats you as an outsider. It's awkward for you to make such a fuss. Xiego was a little confused. I blurt out my knowledge and my accumulated talents are like a spring flowing out. When the words come to my mouth I can't stop them at all. I don't feel awkward at all and neither do others. Mountain Master, is it my imagination? Chen Pingan became increasingly helpless and could only say perfunctorily, okay, it's not an illusion. Put away the fishing rod and Diablo basket, put them back together, and continue on your way to the ancestral mountain. Xiego said cheerfully, Mountain Master, do we look like the inspectors of the 8 prefectures in the drama who visit privately incognito and understand the people's sentiments? Just straw sandals and bamboo sticks, a bit shabby. Chen Pingan said, as long as you are happy. Xiego glanced at the mountains and said, there are so many empty hills. It feels like the territory is bigger than Luolu Mountain and Qingping Sword Sect combined. This guy Qingtong is really happy with his achievements. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, why do you always target fellow youths? Xiego curled his lips and said, the Ascension of Waste deserves me to target him. Chen Pingan said nothing. Xiego said, Mountain Master, as per the old rules, it's better to pretend that I didn't say anything and you didn't hear it. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I can pretend that I didn't hear you. If you can, don't say such things. Someone with a bright mind actually built a temporary shop next to the main road of Shandao. The various Xinjia wines sold here are purchased in bulk from other ferries. Once they are resold, the price is slightly higher so you can definitely make a profit. Business, after all, the customers come here to seek a future, and their words and deeds may be under the eyes of the Jade Sect Master. The wine shop was overcrowded. Xiego picked an empty table in the corner and ordered a pound of loose wine, 2 pounds of braised pork and a few dishes to go with the wine. The previous groups of monks passing by the river happened to be drinking and chatting here, and the charming woman looked at him. As soon as the light came on, he was about to start a conversation and joke with the man in green shirt, but Xiego was not happy. He bent his fingers and pointed at his own eyes and that of the naughty bitch. Xiego held up his mink hat and complained in a low voice, the price is so expensive, it's just a pig killing. Xiego is not very lavish when it comes to money expenses, Otherwise she would not have been able to set up a stall selling medicinal materials and mountain products when she first entered xianxia. Qin Pingan said nothing. Xiego then remembered that the owner of the mountain was in the same company as the shopkeeper, an expert in selling wine. She felt a little resentful, crossed her arms across her chest, closed her eyes and rested. The wine shop was noisy, and some monks even started to punch each other. Xiego felt that their voices were about to blow off the roof, but it was not a big problem, because Xiego was eyeing someone who had a wine table to himself and refused to share the table with anyone. A dull young man with a long sword sheathed in jet black dragon skin lying across the table. The young man was drinking alone, with an indifferent expression. His demeanor was as if a flag was standing behind him, and the 4 characters "defiant" were written on the list. Xiego said in his heart, "Mountain Master, this sword is quite old. The method of making the sword is an old craft. I can't remember it clearly, but it looks familiar." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "It is undoubtedly an old thing. Although this person is not at a high level, his Tao Qi is condensed and he has a return to nature. If nothing else, Qingtong should reuse this person." After drinking he became more and more arrogant. In addition to talking about the excavation of Dadu, he also talked about many so-called inside stories and truths from hearsay, such as Qingmi joining the Jade Guizong, Huangting retreat in Taipingshan, and a recent event in Pushan Yunkatang. Martial arts competitions, etc. were all mentioned, and some people scolded the Tongya sect for turning against the monster clan in the face of battle. Xiego is not interested in any of these. The only thing what makes me feel so good is that it has something to do with my own mountain. Some people say that the man named Qin in Beipingzu is not arrogant in his hometown. The reason why he came to Tongy's to dig the big road is because he wants to compete with Daquan. In order to please the empress, she took the opportunity to suppress the Tongya sect, which had an old grudge against her, so that the latter could completely close down the mountain and never be able to hold his head high again. Xiego pricked up his ears, only regretting that there were not many detailed descriptions, and found that the mountain owner looked at him with a half-smile. Xiego hurriedly pretended to drink, but luckily Xiao Mili and fellow Taoist Kong Ho were not here. Those were the 2 big ears of Luapa Mountain to repay the gods. Qin Pingan glanced outside the door. Soon a man and woman came over. They looked like husband and wife, but because the woman was a pure martial artist, she appeared to be older than the man who was a monk. The man looked at the wine table in the wine shop and recognized at a glance that the guy with the sword on the table was not easy to mess with, so he walked towards the corner wine table with 2 empty seats. He walked up to Qin Pingan, spoke in poor Tong Yezhou Yayan, cupped his fists and asked with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, can we share a table?" Qin Pingan replied in his mellow Beiju Luzhou dialect, "Of course." The woman frowned slightly, but the man sat down directly and said with joy on his face, "How can I meet a fellow Taoist here? Do you also come here to practice?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "I have to fight for my life with my feet." Someone among the drinkers seemed to have recognized the identity of the couple and began to whisper. It turned out that there was a foreign female martial artist who was not weak in fists and kicks. She wanted to use the mountaintop realm to fight with the Pushan who was said to have reached the level of the ultimate realm. Wang Yun asked about the boxing. For some reason the competition in Pushan was not behind closed doors, but also open, so there were many spectators. But what was really talked about the most afterwards was not how wonderful the fight between the 2 female martial arts masters was. After all, there was no suspense about the outcome, but there was a rumor that people had noses and eyes. It was said that someone with sharp eyes saw one of the onlookers in Pushan. There was a man in a green shirt, who was the young hidden official named Chen from Aquarius continent. The number of people watching the mirrored flowers water moon suddenly increased, and Pushan quickly closed the mirrored flowers water moon. In fact, Qin Pingan was in retreat at Fiola Dojo, and of course he did not go to Pushan to watch the battle. The customers in the store carefully observed the woman, and they were sure that she was the unknown martial arts master who had fought with Yi Yun Yun. Some people talked about Qin Pingan who was watching the battle in Pushan and made a comment. "If we were face to face, I might still respect him a little. But since we are in a mirror, I have to say that he is not interested." Hearing these kind words, Xiego grimaced. This guy must be a talented person. There was a mature and prudent demon monk in the store. He couldn't help it. He slapped the table and said in a deep voice, "Stop making noise. There are all these people who are just good at talking and don't know whether to live or die. What's the situation in the world now? I'm really not afraid." After being listened to by someone who is interested, he complained to the academy to ask for credit. "That Chin surnamed, if he only has Luo Luoshan, that's it. Now the next sect is in Tongyi's Hao. Who knows if there is a Qingping sword sect here now? An eyeliner?" I said I wasn't. Do you dare to believe it? I said I was. Do you dare not believe it? As soon as these words came out, the noisy wine shop suddenly became silent. Qing Tong's previous worry that he was not happy for Qin Pingan to reveal his identity and show off during his visit to the mountains was somewhat justified. The shadow of the famous tree, the last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall, really wants to come to the boundary of Wudong Mountain. No matter what the superficial reason for visiting the mountain is, I am afraid that all the local demon monks in Tongya continent will be scattered, without a place to live, and is a huge fortune comparable to wealth and life? If Chen Pingan really has murderous intentions, wouldn't there be military exploits waiting to be picked up everywhere in the Wudong Mountain world? Wudong Mountain has become a hot pot restaurant, and the man named Qin comes and takes away one pot. Qin Pingan couldn't help but glance at the old man. The latter noticed his gaze and nodded in greeting. In the whole room, the man in green shirt was the only one who was careless. He didn't talk much and just drank. He looked young, but he was still relatively young. Steady. Xiego said from his heart, "Mountain Master, the old man praises you in his heart. No wonder people say that our Mountain Master's relationship with the elders has always been very good." Qin Pingan said angrily, "Then you can make a toast for me and say thank you?" Qin Pingan laughed with the couple from his heart and said, "I have seen the two of you competing in the ring at Tuli Mountain before. I never thought that you would become a Taoist couple. I'm very happy to congratulate you." When Qin Pingan visited Luzhou in Beiju for the first time, Huang Shi, a wild cultivator, and Xianxia, a martial artist, had a life-and-death battle. Two of Qin Pingan's friends, Lu Jinglong and Xuanhuan, also had a sword-fighting ceremony to sign a life-and-death certificate on the other side of Toli Mountain. In fact, the Dali court had previously thought of recruiting this embroiderer to make up for the 12 earthly branches. But in the end, Zhou Haijing was chosen, which was relatively more suitable. Qin Pingan picked up the wine bowl and said, "Back in the days of Dili Mountain, Huang Xian Master's techniques were numerous and closely connected. He was able to melt dozens of immortal methods into one furnace, which was eye-opening. At least I was watching the battle from a distance and I felt that I had benefited a lot. Later, when I was traveling, I often thought about it over and over again. Your lady moved like a dragon with her fists, and she was so majestic that she never failed to catch up. She had the style of a master and I was fascinated by it. I just took this opportunity to meet you and have a drink in a foreign land, and I would like to pay tribute to you too." Huang Shi laughed endlessly, but he didn't take these kind words seriously, but he still filled up the wine and drank a bowl on the spot. The taciturn Xiaonyang just picked up the wine bowl and took a sip of wine. Putting down the wine bowl, Huang Shi burped and asked, "Brother, are you traveling to Wutong Mountain, or are you seeking refuge with the Jade Sect Master?" Qin Pingan said, "Let's take a look at the situation here." Huang Shi nodded and said, "That's right. Recording names on the Golden and Jade genealogy is not just about finding an inn to rest. It's not a trivial matter. You have to be careful." Qin Pingan nodded, "That makes sense." This time it was Huang Shi who picked up the wine bowl and said, "We're in love, let's take one." Qin Pingan smiled and clinked the bowl with him. "Meeting is fate, that's all." Huang Shi drank quickly and violently and soon became a little red-faced. Just when Xiaonyang wanted to persuade her, her man began to talk to others casually. "To be honest, I have some connections here in Wudong Mountain. There is a good friend, his realm is not very high, but his achievements in swordsmanship will be very high. Now that Wudong Mountain is hiring, I believe he can become a member of the front seat of the Patriarch Hall. If you still decide to settle here, in case if you encounter difficulties, you can ask him for help. Of course it's best not to have this in case." The embroiderer sighed softly. He is always the same, talking to people when he likes to see them. There is always a reason to say that his intuition is very accurate. Whether it is worth keeping friends or not can be determined at a casual glance. However, Xiaonyang did not stop her, partly because she had confidence in her husband's cultivation and her own martial arts attainments. It was enough for a Jade Pu realm monk and a mountaintop realm martial artist to travel around Tongya continent and not take the initiative to cause trouble. The other half of the reason is that she thinks the girl in the mink hat who is patronizing the braised meat is cute when she occasionally raises her head, her eyes are blank and her cheeks are flushed. After chatting a lot about the current situation of Luzhou and Beiju, Huang Shi sat cross-legged on a bench. "From my hometown to here, not to mention the Aquarius Island in the middle, Qinjianxian is being talked about everywhere now. It made my ears get calloused. This guy is naturally very powerful, but if you really think about it, he is an arrow-stomping person after all." The man in green shirt seemed to feel something when he heard the words and nodded and said, "When you are in the world, reputation is one thing. You can't live without it, nor can it be too high. If your virtue is not matched, your reputation will not be worthy of it. The more false reputations you have, the more you build a snowman and never see the light of day. When Xianxia heard this, she felt that even if this person just said a few words, he was still pretty good. She hesitated for a moment, and just wanted to tell his new drinking buddy the inside story, and persuade him to join the Yupu realm Qingyu patriarch, if he could. There was no need to move away because the founder of the sect with the Taoist name Qingyu, it is inextricably related to Tongyi's Hao Town Demon Tower. It's just that this time the embroidered lady didn't get used to her man. She stepped on the back of Huang Zai's shoe under the table, and twisted the toe of the embroidered shoe hard to remind him not to act recklessly. After drinking some wine, I don't know the heights of the world. At the foot of someone else's dojo, casually revealing a monk's Taoist roots at the top of the mountain, do you think it is a trivial matter that can be overcome by drinking a few bowls of fine wine? What's more, your friend will continue to practice Taoism here for a long time. If he doesn't consider his own safety, he won't think about your friend? Fortunately, after Huang Shi hesitated, he felt that the matter was inappropriate and swallowed his words with the wine. Huang Shi complained to his wife from the bottom of his heart, saying that he was not drunk and knew better. The embroiderer didn't say anything. Huang Shi became ill and began to drink. Xianxia is accustomed to this. The men around her always say that when they have conflicts with others, they must kill decisively and eradicate their enemies. But in daily life, you still have to be soft-hearted. This kind of man has a lot of minor problems. Of course Xianxia still has it. Like it. When she thought of this, the woman who was not good at words softened her eyebrows. The embroiderer noticed that the girl in the mink hat raised her head and grinned at her. The embroiderer was stunned for a moment and then smiled back at the charming girl. She guessed in her mind that she was the daughter of the man in green shirt. Father and daughter don't look alike. Huang Shi stood up to say goodbye, and the man in green shirt stood up and said with a smile, I must treat this drink. Huang Shi is a sweet-tempered person, so he is generous and casual. Besides, Huang Shi had many chi practitioners and women who admired him in Luzhou, Beiju. The embroiderer has personally driven away many flowers and butterflies over the years. Huang Shi Xiao asked, I still can't help it. Let me ask you a final question. Before I drank, what were the first few sentences that were of great benefit? I pondered over and over again. Are they true or false? Qin Pingan smiled and said, say more polite words at the table and less unintentional words outside the table. Although it was said that it was not said, the answer was still vague. Huang Shi still thought it was good. We both know how to drink. The embroiderer noticed that the girl in the mink hat blinked her eyes, as if she had endured the same problem. She said in a low voice, my father not only drinks wine but also sells wine. Huang Shi looked strange for a moment. No wonder he is willing to treat me. The embroiderer smiled sweetly. Xiaonizi is so simple, so her father must not be a serious person. The couple walked towards the door of the store, but they never thought that the young swordsman who occupied the table would also get up and put the drink money on the table. The young swordsman sneered and said, Master Huang Xian has many friends. You don't have to pay when you go out to drink. Huang Shi said proudly, I just met him and he is a fellow countryman. He respects me very much. It has nothing to do with my level or fame. He just thinks I have a good character. Xianxia did not dispel her man's bragging but reminded her, did you forget one thing? People treat you to a drink. Are you embarrassed? Huang Shi slapped his head and then remembered something. He turned around and asked in his heart, by the way, brother, I've been busy drinking and I forgot to ask your name. I'm sorry. The green shirt customer who was checking out at the counter turned his head when he heard this and said with a smile, my pseudonym is Chao Mo, and my real name is Chen Pingan. If nothing else, he is the arrow-stomping person you mentioned. Huang Shi was stunned for a moment and soon stopped laughing. He pointed at him and said, sure enough, I'm drunk. I'm the biggest in the world. We have the same taste. Let's have another drink if we have a chance. Qin Pingan nodded and said cheerfully, no problem. Xiego turned her back to the door and pressed her cheeks hard with both hands. She was afraid that she would laugh out loud. After walking out of the liquor store and starting to climb the mountain, Huang Shi was silent for a long time and asked curiously, why do you two act like nothing is wrong? The embroiderer asked doubtfully, otherwise? It was just a chance encounter. For example, in Luzhou, Beiju, they had met an old Taoist priest who claimed to be the real person of Pa Di Peak Fire Dragon. The key was more than once. The young swordsman said angrily, when we were in Pushen earlier, many people mistakenly thought I was Qin Pingan. Huang Shi was already sweating profusely. He tugged at his collar and said with a wry smile, the problem is that you don't take him seriously, but he is really the same person. The embroiderer just shook her head in disbelief. Huangxi had no choice but to explain, I have had a weird magical power since I was a child. I can see a certain kind of Taoist aura in others. The higher the Taoism and the more spiritual aura, the aura will be like the true body of a or the higher the monk's appearance. You all know it, and at the same time you can roughly judge the purity and turbidity of other people's aura. Xuanhuan said doubtfully, then you should have recognized him as Qin Pingan from the beginning. Why should you feel nervous when you go out? The young swordsman smiled and said, Sister, this is called talking while drunk. It seems that we really hit it off during the previous conversation. It turns out that he is Xuanhuang's younger brother. In Huang Zai's words, this boy's eyes are on his forehead. He has such a famous brother-in-law who is famous all over the continent. He doesn't take it seriously. He also says that the Jade Sword Immortal has no power at all. Qualified to be his preacher. In the small golden elixir realm, his tone is as big as the sky. Huangxi had no choice but to talk to this arrogant brother-in-law. In the beginning he was indeed very light and low profile, almost the same as a chi practitioner from Dongfu or Guanhai realm, but he stood at the counter of the shop when he answered the question. There was a magical sight in an instant. The embroiderer frowned and said, A monk's statue has become higher than Wudong Mountain? Huangxi shook his head and said, If it was just like this I wouldn't be so rude. The truth is gone, not even a trace, not at all. The last page of my ancient family book records this mysterious scene, called The Real Person is Face to Face but Does Not Know Each Other, but the Taoist transformation of heaven and earth is just a stone's throw away. Huangxi had never met that person before, so with Huang Zai's character, even if they met and knew that the other person was Qin Pingan, it would be nothing. What really made Huangxi nervous was the Taoism of the other person. Huangxi sat down on the steps. The young swordsman turned around and walked down the mountain without saying a word. The embroiderer asked worriedly, What to do? The young swordsman said in a deep voice, Be my disciple. Huangxi hesitated to speak. The embroiderer thought for a while but still didn't stop her brother from going to the mountain. Huangxi asked, Xuanhuan, this guy Deng Jianpain has always wanted to become a disciple of Qin Pingan. How come I don't know about it at all? Last time we passed by Aquarius Continent, why didn't he go to Luapa Mountain? The embroiderer said helplessly, It's not like you don't know. Jianping never tells me anything about what's on his mind. Huangxi smiled and said, That's right. As long as I say a few more words to you, brat, you will feel like celebrating the new year. I can't help it, I found it myself. Good wife, among the three of them Huangxi is the last one. Xuanhuang's real name is Deng Jianxiao. The two siblings were orphaned at a very young age and depended on each other for their lives. In fact, Deng Jianxiao also had Taoist qualifications at the beginning, but eventually became a pure martial artist because she gave up on Taoism at the beginning of mountain climbing. She forcibly dispersed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth with a breath of pure qi, breaking many acupoints. Many times when things come to a head, there is no choice but to have both ends. The two siblings went through a bleak period when they were young. However, Xuanhuan did not mention these specific details of the past, and Deng Jianpain was even more mute. The embroiderer said, I don't know either. He went out for training back then and started to retreat when he returned to the mountain. If I asked him, he wouldn't say anything. He just said that he went down the mountain to get to the mountain. After that trip, Deng Jianpain became a different person. Before, the siblings finally had a stable share of the family business in the mountain dojo. However, Deng Jianpain was very undisciplined in his spiritual practice and sword training, and wasted his time. Deng Jianxiao was a child since childhood. She felt sorry for her younger brother the most, so of course she wouldn't say anything. Fortunately, during that trip, Deng Jianpain began to practice Taoism seriously. In addition, he had a good sister who gave him everything he asked, so he was able to refine swords very quickly and his level rose very quickly. Later, Huangxi often teased Xuanhuan. Fortunately, Deng Jianpain had a good foundation. Otherwise, if he followed your doting method and didn't follow the rules of being a sister and followed him in everything, he would have become a lawless and harmful party. The dandy boy. The embroiderer would reply with a smile on her face, without even looking at whose younger brother it was. However, during that experience, Deng Jianpain also brought back two children with frostbitten hands and took them as his direct disciples. Huangxi and Xuanhuan knew this matter clearly after they became Taoist monks. They also knew that the two children were born in poor families and that their parents sold charcoal to make a living. As for where their hometown is, they said that Huangxi had forgotten the specific name. It seems to be a small country southeast of Beiju Luzhou, a village outside some city. When they met Huang Shi, they had already lived in the mountains and practiced Taoism for some years, and had grown into a young man and a graceful girl respectively. But even if they become Taoist monks on the mountain, they still seem to like to talk about things from their childhood. For example, they often go to the city with their father in a bullock cart, go to the market or New Year's Eve, sell charcoal in exchange for money, and have new clothes, new shoes. Although their qualifications were extremely average, Deng Jianqing still valued his master very much, and he did not hesitate to spend a lot of resources. Deng Jianqing no longer even had the intention to accept disciples, saying that having a first disciple and a closed disciple was enough. Huang Shi didn't think much about this, let alone ask any questions. He just thought that it was this cold-faced and warm-hearted brother-in-law who saw the two children suffering from the same illness on the way back then, and felt compassion for them, so he took them back to the mountains. The embroiderer said softly, "Actually, Jianping is very satisfied with your brother-in-law, but he is too shy to say it." Huang Shi smiled and said, "You know, it's not like one family doesn't come into the same house." The embroiderer said, "Is it okay to lose my apprenticeship so rashly?" Huang Shi smiled and said, "I don't know if it will work or not. I'm just sure that Jianping went the wrong way. He shouldn't have gone down the mountain to be a disciple. He has to go up the mountain to find the master." The embroiderer quickly figured out the connection and became worried. "She is always so single-minded and short-sighted. How can I find a wife in the future?" Huang Shi said, "We don't have to worry about this. This kid is very lucky." As expected, the young swordsman returned to the mountain road with a sad expression and sat next to his sister. Deng Jianqing scolded himself for being a fool. He should have taken notice of the green bamboo staff when he saw it. Huang Shi joked, "I'm usually quite clever." The embroiderer gave him an elbow, but it didn't do anything at all, and she was still making sarcastic remarks. Deng Jianping didn't take it seriously but looked sad. Huang Shi asked, "When I passed by last time, why didn't you go to Luolu Mountain to have a look? I heard that the mountain was closed, and you thought you would be rejected? Why don't you go and ask for trouble?" Deng Jianping said, "At that time I felt ashamed and felt that I was not qualified to climb that mountain to meet him." Huang Shi fell silent, and Xuanhuan gave her another elbow, signaling to continue asking. She was also curious. Huang Shi had no choice but to continue asking, "Is it because you are a sword cultivator and he has the title of hidden official? Because he has made great achievements in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, so you take a special look at him?" Deng Jianping shook his head. "It's not for these reasons." Huang Shi said sternly, "Jianping, then I'm even more surprised. You've never been the kind of person who admires anyone with a higher level. Why do you want to be your disciple alone? If I remember correctly, Bai Shang has gained it. Your idea of becoming a disciple was just rejected by you." Deng Jianping remained silent. "There are some injustices that we are accustomed to. No matter heaven or earth, gods or gods, I don't care. After I, Deng Jianping, learned the sword to a small degree, I decided to mind my own business. I am willing to follow the footsteps of those who came before me and go straight on the road, regardless of my life." Huang Shi asked, "Since you refused to go to Luapa Mountain in Aquarius Continent, why did you change your mind temporarily after meeting him today?" Deng Jianping became anxious and cursed, "I'm a stubborn person but am not a heartless fool. Why didn't I see you when you could see me? Why did you miss out on being a disciple in person?" Huang Shi and Xuanhuan looked at each other and smiled. Chen Pinggan did indeed meet the Qingyu Patriarch on Wudong Mountain, in a library that seemed to be hidden in a cloud cave. In the mountain of books, Chen Pinggan took out a book from time to time and doubled it. Qing Tong next to him looked as if he was looking for a thief, which made Chen Pinggan a little bit overwhelmed. Qing Tong said, "Then let's do whatever you want and chat somewhere else." Xiego began to shake his head and whistle. "If you continue to be so arrogant, I will clear you up. Nowadays, I not only like reading books, but the owner of the mountain also praised my landscape travel notes for being simple and unpretentious. From what I heard, I wonder if there will be a chance for it to be published as a book." Qin Pinggan smiled and said, "How can the master persuade the guest to do as he pleases?" Having said that, he still put the books in his hands back to their original places. Together they walked to the corridor outside the building. Qin Pinggan talked about what he had seen and felt. He said that it was really good for fellow Taoist Qing Tong to establish a sect here. Those demon monks, no matter what they talked about in their words or on their faces and eyes, in their originally gray world, now seemed to have a bright brilliance. At least I dare to look forward to tomorrow, regardless of whether I will be disappointed tomorrow. Naturally, Qing Tong used landscape restriction in the library. They walked to the railing and Qin Pinggan tentatively asked, Would you like to introduce you to these two guest friends? Qing Tong clicked his tongue and said, it can't be the two guys I saw before, right? Qin Pingan was really not thin-skinned, with a hearty smile. What a coincidence. Qing Tong said indifferently, it's easy to handle. It's a small matter for a government office somewhere in the mountains to add 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks. Qing Tong asked, by arranging them like this, Master Guan won't feel that he is not proud enough, right? Qin Pingan smiled and said, I think it's a great honor to be able to talk about small things with big people. Qing Tong and Xiego said in unison, irony? Xiego was so angry that he and Qing Tong wanted to go there together. He wished he could eat those 2 words to satisfy his stomach. Qin Pingan took out his tobacco stick and started puffing away smoke. Qing Tong said, I heard that the mountain master is good at naming. I have something to ask of you. Xiego twitched his lips, then you have really found an expert. Qin Pingan smiled and said, easy to say. Qing Tong said, Wudong Mountain has a total of 96 peaks, more than 200 large palaces and pavilions, 39 large ridges between the peaks, 18 caves and grottos suitable for spiritual practice, 12 bamboo seas and peach forests. There are 3 large rivers, 16 mountain streams, more lakes, ponds and waterfalls, and all kinds of cliff carvings and stone monuments are needed. Qin Pingan choked on the dry smoke and coughed. He quickly said, he'll talk about it next time. I happen to have something to do and I have to go to the Qinghu Palace in Qingjing Mountain immediately to make an appointment. Qing Tong laughed and said, what a coincidence. Qin Pingan sighed, who says it's not the case? Qing Tong saw 3 people climbing the mountain together on the main road of Zushan, the Shinto road. Among them, the young swordsman among them hurriedly went down the mountain. In his own realm, Qing Tong was in the Ascension realm. Not to mention the content of his words, he could even hear the monk's thoughts, but he was too lazy to do so. The gate of Wudong Mountain is open. It doesn't matter who you are, what your status and background are, and what kind of monastic qualifications you have. Come and go as you please. Xiego complained, fellow Taoist Qing, you are the host. As a guest, I just give you a suggestion. Don't always speak in a weird way. It will hurt people. I want come next time. Qing Tong was a little surprised. When did Sword Cultivator by Jing become so talkative? The clouds gather and disperse outside the building, just like the separation in life. Qing Tong wanted to say goodbye to the guests, but he never thought that Qin Pingan didn't move, so Xiego just lay on the railing and waited patiently. On the other side of the mountain road, Xuanhuan said softly, Jianghu, my brother-in-law just said when you came down the mountain, that person is probably in the mountain right now. Let's see if we can help you introduce him to him. Huang Shi patted his chest and said, for the sake of my brother-in-law's great future, I am a brother-in-law, so I am naturally brave enough to say a few words of kindness to my new friend to ask for help. For some reason Huang Shi found that the atmosphere was not right. First, Xuanhuan fell silent, and then Deng Jianpain turned slightly sideways and began to be in a daze. Huang Shi was a little confused but still asked in her heart, Xuanhuan, did I say something wrong? Can I make amends with Jianping? Xuanhuan, who was sitting between the two of them, had gentle eyes and patted his arm gently. No, don't think about it. Huang Shi was even more shocked after that. From the corner of his eye, he noticed that Deng Jianpain had a wrinkled face, his mouth was open and his face was full of tears, but he never cried or couldn't cry. The embroiderer wanted to speak several times, but she didn't know how to comfort her brother, so her eyes turned red. She choked up first, maybe because she was distressed or wronged. Who knows? Deng Jianpain took a deep breath without wiping the tears on his face and said in a trembling voice, Sister, I have been sorry for you since I was a child, so after you killed those beasts and brought me to live a stable life, I will still deliberately not practice well. Because it seems that every higher level, it proves that I am less of a thing. Later, after I learned some swordsmanship, I thought I could put aside the relationship with the past. As a result, I escaped again in a place called Suijia City. At that time when I saw the 2 children on the street, I felt close to them as if I were seeing ourselves. Later, the 2 children were kept in the dark and were still standing next to the bullock cart. They just looked at me and I looked away. After they were killed, the disaster was about to fall on my head, so I fled alone. What was wrong? It seemed that anyone could escape, so why couldn't I? But I felt that only Deng Jianpain couldn't. I couldn't deceive myself. The young swordsman gently beat his heart again and again. Sister, I feel uncomfortable. For so many years I feel that I am doing everything wrong, practicing sword is wrong, eating and drinking is wrong, everything is wrong. Sister, you have it's even more wrong for someone like me to be a younger brother. I'm sorry. Deng Jianping stopped talking as if he was extremely disappointed and relieved, and handed the long sword to his sister. Deng Jianxiao didn't dare to take back the sword. She subconsciously turned to look at her man. Huang Zai's eyes were firm and he nodded, "Just keep it for Jianping first." The woman took the long sword and choked with tears. "Huang Shi, what should I do? Why is it like this?" Huang Shi replied softly, "I haven't seen him before. I can still hide and deceive myself. When I actually meet him, I know that I can't escape. I think it's good. It's not a bad thing in the long run." Deng Jianping stood up and went down the mountain first. The young swordsman walked in front both up and down the mountain. The embroiderer asked softly, "Is everything okay?" Huang Shi wiped her tears and said softly, "Believe me, it's okay. Xuanhuan, when did I lie to you?" Xuanhuan nodded, but then said something silly that made Huang Shi dumbfounded. "Do you think if we go to ask Chen Pingon will he agree even if Jianping becomes an anonymous disciple?" Huang Shi was depressed and distressed, so he could only say, "Becoming a master or a disciple on the mountain involves the Dharma lineage. How can it be child's play?" The embroiderer glanced at Deng Jianping's desolate back, and instantly felt a mixture of emotions and sadness. She didn't think her life was hard before, but it was only at this moment that Deng Jianxiao felt that life was really hard. Huang Shi clenched his hands into fists and placed them gently on his knees. He raised his eyes and looked into the distance. It seemed that when he was young all the teenagers felt that if the mountain could not come to them I would be there. If I could go to the mountains I would be able to accomplish many things. He remembered a gatha for no reason. When people walk on a bridge, the water on the bridge does not flow. Probably all the difficulties and sufferings in life are caused by people walking on the bridge. When people cross the bridge is always there, making people dare not look back and look at the way they came. When Deng Jianping reached the foot of the mountain, he seemed to have calmed down and wanted to turn around and call his sister and brother-in-law to go home. The young man forced a smile and was about to say hello, but was stunned for a moment. Further up the mountain road, I saw a man in a green shirt standing with his hands in his sleeves and a gentle smile. The man asked, "The situation has come to an end. Are you no longer a disciple?" Deng Jianping hesitated for a moment and nodded, "I don't want to be a disciple anymore. I just want to thank Qin Jianxian Dao in person for my 2 disciples." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Then I'd like to thank you too." Deng Jianping was confused. Qin Pingon said, "I may not believe many of the truths I have said, but at least there is one truth in them. Today's Jindan realm swordsman Deng Jianping lets me know that it is right." Deng Jianping asked, "What's the point?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "You don't lack this truth, you don't need to know." Deng Jianping was a little embarrassed. Sure enough, was it difficult to say a few more words to him? But Qin Pingon quickly added, "What you lack is swordsmanship in realm. You lack a master who can both reason and teach swordsmanship." Deng Jianping was completely stunned. Wearing a green shirt he walked slowly down the mountain. The sword fairy's sleeves were swaying slightly as if in the spring breeze. Deng Jianping refused to become a disciple, but Qin Pingon was willing to accept a disciple. Sword of Coming Chapter 1133. The white clouds are like formations and the mountains are as deep as the sea. There are no guests here, just a few glasses of wine. Whether the flowers are blooming or the birds are flying, the wind and smoke are clear, and the characters are all in the snow. Qin Pingon came to Huang Shi and Xuanhuan. Behind him, higher up, there was a girl in a mink hat and a handsome monk with an unfamiliar face, wearing a green robe, slowly walking down the Shinto steps. Quickly climbing the mountain and arriving next to Qin Pingon, Deng Jianping was obviously very nervous. Huang Shi found it interesting. When talking to her sister and brother-in-law, "Aren't you pretty young and witty? Now you are a mute and you are in trouble?" Qin Pingon didn't say anything and Deng Jianping became more and more embarrassed. Huang Shi saw that the atmosphere was awkward and couldn't turn his elbows out, so he joked, "Qin Jianxian is too familiar with the elegant words of Luzhou, our northern capital. I can't hear the slightest trace of Aquarius Island elegant dialect or Old Dali Mandarin accent." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Everyone is happy to meet you no matter where you are. But in the final analysis, I am not as honest as Brother Huang in treating others, so when I was paying the bill, I reciprocated and signed up for my number." The embroiderer hurriedly said, "Qin Jianxian is right. Be careful when you go out. You should speak only a few words to people you meet, and don't give up your whole heart to everyone casually." Deng Jianping nodded, deeply convinced. Huang Zai's face was full of melancholy. "My good wife, you are so unkind, you are burning the bridge across the river. Am I the only one who is a confused outsider? Xiego and Qing Tong came here to get together, and Xianxia asked in a low voice, Qin Jianxian, who is this girl? Qin Pingan smiled and said, Master Deng just calls me by my name. Her name is Xiego and she is our Luolu Mountain genealogy monk. Of course, we are definitely not father and daughter. Xiego rubbed his mink hat, grinned and introduced himself. My name is Xiego. Why don't I mention it by name? It's a false name for an external object. You can just call me Guzi from now on. I am the second in command of Luo Luoshan. The worshipper, like the mountain master and Deng Jianpain, is a sword cultivator, but I entered the mountain later. It seems that among the genealogy cultivators, I am a little earlier than your brother. Although Huangshi was always regarded as a wandering wild cultivator in Luzhou, Beiju, in fact he had a great background and origins. Otherwise, he would not have suggested that his brother-in-law Deng Jianpain crossed the continent to come to Wutong Mountain to practice Taoism. It was Huangshi who knew the true identity of the Qingyu patriarch, and his relationship with the demon-suppressing tower. Huangshi said from the bottom of his heart, Huangshi, a monk from Luzhou, Beiju, and his Taoist companion Deng Jianxiao, have met Senior Qing Tong. Our original intention is for Deng Jianpain to come here to find a seat in the ancestral hall. Qing Tong just nodded in greeting with a cold and distant expression, and casually made a pun. The temple is small. The vegetarian food is bland, so it may not be delicious. Don't look at Qing Tong's lack of momentum on Xiaoma and Bai Jing's side. After all, he is a time-honored person with 10,000 years of experience in the Ascension realm. Not to mention he is the owner of one of the 9 Xiongjian towers in the world, and he is even more closely related to Lao Guan. The Lord has been a neighbor for countless years. In the eyes of Qing Tong, how could the Huangshi and Deng siblings be treated with such condescension? Xiego de Bao said, I worship my master and practice my sword well. If you encounter any problems in building the road, if the mountain master is not around, you can ask me. You can also often go to the sword worship platform on one of the mountains of the Luapa mountain domain. Find Gontang, just worship Gontang. When you get to Luolu mountain you will know his identity. Anyway, the little old man is also a sword cultivator with a fair level, and his own Taoist power is average, but his ability to preach is not well, patience is a rare advantage in him. Qin Pingan had a small accident. It was rare for Xiego to be so concerned about other people's cultivation. The old deaf boy had to suffer a lot in order to learn some sword skills from her. I remember that when we first arrived at Luapa Mountain, the old deaf boy was still reluctant in every possible way. He was afraid that the young hermit official would ask him to shoulder the burden, which would cause extra social affairs and delay his cultivation. It's good now. I heard that Gan Chongfeng has moved directly to Jiamao on Huayin Peak to teach Taoism. Instead, I started to worry that those Taoist embryos have no way to study and are not brave enough to break through the cultivation realm. Just because Deng Jianpain's visit to the mountains to learn Taoism made Xiego think of the earth on Earth thousands of years ago. Almost all the monsters who had opened up their spiritual intelligence and could shape their bodies had a pure and unyielding Taoist spirit. Heart, you want to learn from the masters of those who have attained the Tao. Many monsters have just heard the name of a certain mountain or a certain Taoist temple and know a general direction. They will make a wish and resolutely go there. The mountains and rivers are far away and the Tao lies there, so we have to work hard. This journey often takes several years or even decades. The journey is often extremely difficult and dangerous, and finally we have the opportunity to meet the Taoist priest who has been asking him to help solve my doubts. It is not only a hard work that consumes endless physical strength, but also a journey of mind. Even if you are lucky enough not to be expelled and be left on the mountain by the Qi refiner, the matter of cultivating Taoism has only just begun. Most of them will be anonymous for the time being. Whether it can be included in the door wall requires long-term observation. After that, the mountain will be protected for decades, or even it may take 100 years for a Taoist priest to teach you a few words of true secrets. So Xiego's first impression of swordsman Deng Jianpain was not bad, and he would choose his master. Choosing a master depends not only on vision but also on luck. This is a very true skill. We need to know how many demon monks who sincerely followed the Tao in ancient times met a miserable end. They tried their best to fetch water from a bamboo basket and became the Taoist food for some Qi refiners with ulterior motives. The embroiderer wiped the corners of her eyes, focused her voice into a thread and murmured softly, "Fortunately, all the hard work has come to an end. A rather bad beginning has a happy ending." In fact, everything that the woman does besides her brother, her own martial arts training, and all the matters on the mountain top are handled extremely carefully. Only the matters related to Jianping are trivial, and it is easy to get lost and get entangled. It was extremely difficult, as if she had lost her soul, and she had to ask Huangxi for advice. Huangxi had no choice but to remind her in her heart, "Xianyang, where are you now?" "I just became a master." Jianping still has a long way to go from now on. He only said that he would go to Luopa Mountain and practice sword practice with Chen Pingan. No more than practicing at home, there are many things that need to be paid attention to, such as how to get along with those fellow disciples who are already well established and famous. Can they be harmonious? Will they be excluded? Can Jianping adapt to it? Luo Mountain's family tradition, whether it is related to the elders or not, usually treats people less casually than in the dojo at home. We know each other well in the past, so naturally we don't have to worry about saying something wrong or inappropriate, and the other person may miss him for a long time. Besides, well, our side is just a hilltop with no more than 100 people in total. It is far inferior to the hidden dragons and crouching tigers in Luolu Mountain. There are many experts with different temperaments. Let's just talk about this girl Xia. She can serve as the second enshrinement of Luolu Mountain at the foot of the mountain. In the store, can we imagine her true identity? Things like this will all be considered and figured out by Jianping in the future. He needs to be able to accommodate others and adapt to the environment entirely on his own. The embroiderer felt sorry for herself and said, "It's still my fault. I didn't teach enough principles in the past. It's also my fault that you, the brother-in-law, are not close to my brother-in-law, so you can't have a few drinks throughout the year." Huang Zai's head grew red when he heard this. The number of times I have gone to drink with him has never been less, and I still have to face him. There was only one time when both parties drank well, but Deng Jianping was so drunk that he sat on the ground, and the brother-in-law had to squat on the ground to drink with him. The brat was so drunk that he still kept his momentum and said, "I dare to let you down. Sister, just chop me to death. Even if you can't chop me to death, I will die on the top of your mountain." It was the scene of a vigil during the Chinese New Year. Huangxi ended up carrying his brother-in-law on his back, and even had nectar from heaven spat on his head. When his brother-in-law got this job, Huangxi himself felt that he was sincere. The embroiderer whispered, "Husband, it's hard for you." Huangxi smiled and said, "Xianyang, if you want to make up for the past you don't have enough, just ask me to get it. If you feel you owe me, you can pay me back in the next life. I will be an uncle then. I will let you rub ink on your sleeves every day to add fragrance, and I will also serve you tea and water to help wash your feet. Haha, I feel happy just thinking about it." The embroiderer elbowed her again and then started to worry again, but Jianping went on a long trip alone, with no one around to take care of him. Will he be wronged when he gets to Luopa Mountain? If a cultivator wants to gain something, he should go through a lot of hardships. Don't be anxious. In short, let's take it one step at a time. You have to believe in my vision of good and bad people, and you can also believe in Jianping's Taoism. Art of. Huangxi then gave an attributive sentence. What's more, when Jianping went to that Luopa Mountain, what he really wanted to learn was not just Chen Pingan's swordsmanship. Xiego seemed to be afraid that the mountain master would regret it, so he said tentatively, "Sister Deng Jianxiao and brother-in-law Huangxi are both very good people, especially this one named Xianyang who is naive. I believe that the character of this child Jianping is not that different." Where to go? The owner of the mountain picked it up and missed it. Is this called buying a pig to watch a pen? Which pot does Qingtong not mention? Yinguan is able to recruit disciples here. Doesn't Wudong Mountain have some credit for naming it as a courtesy? Xiego grinned and muttered, "It's bad luck. They'll never come here again." Qingtong felt relieved. From now on, it would be best if you, the Taoist couple, are not invited to come. Chen Pingan changed the subject and said with a smile, "Comrade Lao Qin, please make some space for us to sit down and chat for a few words. Then let Deng Jianping perform a simple apprenticeship ceremony and stop disturbing fellow Taoist Qingxiu." Qing Tong opened all the restrictions on the landscape and found a quiet place in the private dojo. In the room, the host Qing Tong and the host Chen Pingan sat on the same seat. Xiego sat cross-legged on the chair, opposite Deng Jianping and three others. Chen Pingan was sitting upright, and he only had to drink a bowl of apprenticeship tea from Deng Jianping to be registered as master and apprentice. After that, you still need to change to the Jisa Peak Ancestral Master Hall and go through the process of recording your name on the Golden and Jade genealogy. Chen Pingan looked soft and said slowly, "Jianping, when we become masters later, we will have the status of masters and disciples on the mountain. As a preacher, my requirements for you do not say what realm you must reach in the future, so you don't have to feel pressure in this regard. I only have one thing to say. You must remember that after you follow me into the mountains to practice, you must sincerely follow the Tao and work hard to practice swordsmanship. In addition, if you feel that you are not good at dealing with people, you can live in seclusion in the mountains and concentrate on practicing swordsmanship. Occasionally leave the dojo and go out to relax, whether it is at the top of Zhufeng Mountain or in Huaihuang County. No matter who you meet on the road, no matter who the person is or what their identity is, just have a rough etiquette. As for your fellow brothers and sisters, there is no need to rush to meet them, and when they meet, there is no need to deliberately ponder their thoughts, treat people and things, just be yourself. Huang Shi glanced at Xianxia as if to say, look, Qin Jianxian has already thought of what you are worried about. Xianxia, who had been subconsciously clutching her dress, felt as if she had taken a reassurance. She just felt like she was in a dream. Jian Ping was relieved of her knot and recognized her master. Xiego immediately helped. These are not polite words, they are the sincerity of our mountain master. For example, there is a Tao Jianxian in the Qingping sword sect who is in the Jindan realm. He is in the same realm as Jian Ping. He was born in Shanzi Yeshio and he has a bad temper and loves to scold people. Jiang Shangzhen, Miyu, my Xiaoma, and even the owner of the mountain were all taught a few words by him in person. Tao Jianxian is still alive and kicking every day now. Now that we are all family members, then I will tell you more about Tao Jiangxian's feats. Last time Qingping sword sect held the opening ceremony of the mountain, Tao Jianxian was the last one to get up and met our mountain master on the mountain road. He spoke straightforwardly and persuaded that there should be less red tape for this kind of ceremony, otherwise he would take a nap in the ancestral hall and sleep in his cage. The mountain master had no choice but to nod obediently and say okay. Qin Pingan smiled and explained, the story of what happened has been polished by Xiego, and it is a bit exaggerated. Tao Wen doesn't just curse people when there is nothing wrong. Most of them happen for a reason. The embroiderer was stunned when she heard that. That Jindan realm sword cultivator couldn't be so bold, right? How cruel must he be to be so generous? How many lives do you have to dare to curse like this? Huang Shi laughed from the bottom of her heart and said, Xiaonyang, I can see that Xie Zishi has a good impression of you. Maybe this is called eye compatibility. The woman then thought, even if Xie Zishi used an exaggeration, but no matter how ignorant we Jian Pain is, how can we always be better people than that Tao Jianxian? Qing Tong coughed and reminded that this was Yin Guan recruiting disciples. In a sense, every word he said was preaching and teaching skills. You, Bai Jing, an outsider, should not interrupt, it is inappropriate. Xiego rolls his eyes, bad luck is really bad luck. Little did he know that Qing Tong felt that meeting the two of them would seem to be a conflict of fate, which would be his downfall. Qin Pingan said sternly, Deng Jian Pain, before you formally become a master, as far as I am concerned, it is not only the master who chooses his apprentice, but the apprentice can also choose his master. The rule that one day is a master and a lifetime is a father is not so natural. If one day you feel that the two ways are not compatible, you can just get together and break up. Don't be too rigid about the master-disciple status, and don't think too much about the human world outside of practicing Taoism and practicing swordsmanship. Of course, you still have to go through the necessary ancestral hall procedures. Yes, remember not to leave without saying hello. In fact, both the master and the apprentice were of the same age, but no one here thought that Qin Pingan was putting on airs, and Deng Jianpain was always holding his breath and listening with an open mind. Until this moment, Deng Jianpain's mind was still full of confusion. Hearing these words, he suddenly became frightened and said in a trembling voice, Unless Qin Jianxian and Luo Luoshan insist on driving me away, I will never leave the genealogy and retreat. Yi said, even if you drive me away, I will still take my bedding and stay at the foot of the mountain, waiting for Qin Jianxian to change his mind. Qin Pingan smiled and said nothing. Xiego was overjoyed. This guy knows how to take advantage and knows how to find a way out at the foot of the mountain. The gatekeeper of our Luolu mountain is Taoist priest Xianwei. Qing Tong felt sorry for this young swordsman. Until now he still looked at Qin Jianxian with a sense of distance. Qin Pingan said, Before I hand you the apprenticeship T. Jianping, please go and wait outside the door. I have something to say to your sister and brother-in-law. Deng Jianpain quickly stood up, walked to the door, closed the door gently, and stood in the corridor as if facing the wall, pursed his lips. After a long time he came back to his senses and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Xiego raised his chin and signaled to Qing Tong that you are an outsider and you should leave the house quickly. Qing Tong, a landowner, had no choice but to stand up and make room for a group of outsiders. Qin Pingan smiled and said, It doesn't matter. Friends Qing Tong don't need to avoid suspicion. You are a registered worshipper of Qingping sword sect. At this moment, everyone in the house counts as one of your own. As expected, Qing Tong sat down again and shook his sleeves coolly. Xiego stared at this guy. Xiaomi Li said, the martial arts master in the book who has an internal strength of 1 or 2 jiuzi has excellent martial arts, and I heard that he can kill people with his eyes. Qing Tong was actually depressed in his heart. He was annoyed to death by this young girl in a mink hat who was now known as Xiego. She might as well have met Bai Jing, the swordsman from 10,000 years ago. Chen Pingan said, fellow Taoist Huang Master Deng, first of all, I have to thank you for trusting me to give Jian Ping to me to teach you swordsmanship. Then I also ask you to rest assured that I will be extremely careful in my teachings in the future, both emotionally and rationally. Jian Ping now he is in the Golden Core realm. With his qualifications and foundation, it is not difficult to break through the bottleneck and enter the Yuanying realm within a few seconds. As expected, his real difficulty lies in the fact that when he was in retreat in the Yuanying realm and tried to break through, he had 2 inner demons. One of them, when it was an accompanying city in Qinpingan at that time, I had my own means to prepare for a rainy day and help him pass the level without taking shortcuts. However, the inner demons of the previous level must be solved by the person who tied the bell. Before Grandmaster Deng says goodbye to Jian Ping, he needs to have a frank heart-to-heart talk with his brother and sister. Remember, Grandmaster Deng should not care about Deng Jian Ping's feelings, and should not blindly listen to Deng Jian Ping's thoughts. He should cover his ears with lightning speed. Once it is clear what Deng Jianxia was thinking and why he acted as he did in the difficult situation that year. It should be noted that Deng Jianping was unable to resolve this knot, which was calamity. When faced with calamity he ran away again and again, and his Taoist heart retreated. Even if the flood breaks the embankment, Deng Jianping's achievements in this life will not only stop at the nascent soul realm, but he will sail against the current and retreat again. Therefore, Grandmaster Deng must solve the hidden dangers in this matter first, otherwise he will not be able to succeed later. The more I preach, the more mistakes I make regarding Deng Jianping's future. Deng Jianxiao said in a deep voice, I will definitely live up to my trust. I will go outside and have a heart-to-heart talk with Jian Ping. Huang Shi hesitated to speak. Chen Pingan said bluntly, Deng Jianxiao, have you really thought about it? Do you recognize yourself and dare to tell others who you are? What's the point? Deng Jianxiao was stunned. Huang Shi nodded slightly, and the authorities were confused and it was clear to the onlookers. Chen Pingan continued to ask, when suffering comes, dare to be angry and speak out, rise up and kill when necessary. Is it for yourself or for your relatives? If the Tao is to have both, what is the order and emphasis? Deng Jianxiao at that time, it was inappropriate to abandon the immortals and turn to learn boxing. I couldn't help myself. Today who do I live for in this life and who should I live for? From now on, Deng Jianping should face Deng Jianping. What is the responsibility of this name and how is it responsible? Deng Jianxiao couldn't answer a single question. Huang Shi said cautiously, Xin Jianxian, there are a lot of questions. Could you please ask the embroiderer to calm down a little? Chen Pingan just glanced at him. Huang Shi became speechless. What a guy, he is so powerful. Chen Pingan, who had a similar conversation at the wine table, was completely different from the other two. Chen Pingan was silent for a moment, asking and answering a question to himself. As a monk, his will is depressed and his heart is like ashes. Can the ashes be rekindled? If you stir up the embers of the brazier, there is a hidden pearl. Huang Shi secretly praised. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Master Deng, go call Jian Ping in. Deng Jianxiao had been in a daze and suddenly woke up, stood up and went out with Huang Shi. Qing Tong was the first to leave his seat and stand up. Xiego did this on purpose, slowing down and leaving the chair. He could no longer speak and act exactly like Qing Tong. What does it mean to practice Taoism in the mountains? It is a secret heart-to-heart teaching between master and disciple, and the Dharma is not transmitted to the 6 ears. Deng Jianping didn't sit down, he just stood. Chen Pingan didn't say anything about this and said, Jian Ping, I can allow you to practice sword breaking slowly, and I can even accept my own direct disciples who often slack off in practicing sword, wasting time and wasting their qualities. There is no big deal. To succeed, you must be a good person with a clear conscience from beginning to end. The disciple's failure in practicing Taoism is because, after all, I, the master who is a preacher, failed to teach the disciple well. These are easy to discuss and you can be allowed to be on the road of life. Make mistakes, admit them and correct them. But I will never allow Deng Jianping to disappoint his sister who has no requirements for him. One day, I will not only clean up the family in person, but also let you know what it means to regret having me, Chen Pingan, as your teacher. Did you hear me? Deng Jianping shook his head and said in a deep voice, Qin Jianxian, I remember every word. Qin Pingan smiled, ha. Deng Jianping suddenly realized it and scratched his head, Master, all the disciples have remembered it. Qin Pingan seemed to have profound meaning in his words. A true heart-to-heart comparison will not drag down both parties. Deng Jianping seems to have some enlightenment. In the corridor outside the house, Qing Tongxian symbolically used a layer of formation to help isolate the world inside the house. He glanced at the Taoist couple from other continents and asked straight to the point, Deng Jianxiao, with the cultivation levels of you and the Taoist couple, why do you let your younger brother come to Wudong Mountain to join a Jade Pu realm family? The embroiderer was hesitant. After all, it involved her man's family secrets. Huang Shi was very honest and said with a smile, to be honest, the founder of my family once traveled all over the world to visit real people. Before the war was over, he left a notebook recording his experiences. He wrote that he was with Qing Tong at the Yao Tower in Tongyi's Hao Town. The senior had a chance encounter. At that time, he stopped to rest at the entrance of a grotto sealed with white clouds. He was struck by the scene and chatted a few words about his Taoist experience. Unfortunately, the conversation with the master in the mountain did not agree, so the ancestor took his leave and left. Qing Tong thought for a while and finally remembered that thousands of years ago, he had indeed seen a sloppy and lame old Taoist priest with profound Taoist power and strong agility. But for the young Qing Tong, this kind of encounter is like a leaf of duckweed spinning on the water, fleeting and never paying much attention to it. So Qing Tong just said with emotion, it's not easy for your family to inherit the incense tradition for so many years. If you keep up your efforts, don't insult the ancestor. There is an old saying in the mountains, it is better to mess with the new sects that are booming than the old mountains with endless orthodoxy. Because I don't know if there are several ancestors hiding in the latter mountain or in the hanging statues. Huang Shi called the Taoist priest and said respectfully, the younger generation should bear in mind the ancestral precepts and teachings of the elders. Seeing that the atmosphere was good, Huang Shi said, my ancestor Zhang Fu also wrote down a sentence in his notes, saying that in Tongyi's Hao back then, there were only two strange people who dared to say that they had realized Taoism. They were in Donghaiguan Taoist temple in one continent, under the central plane tree. Qing Tong seemed to be smiling but said, such biased words can only be written in a notebook and closed for self-admiration. As for the children in future generations who are qualified to read this notebook, too much words will inevitably lead to mistakes, so don't spread it outside. If this kind of talk is accidentally heard by the old viewer, the person who said it and the person who listened will definitely be unable to eat and walk around, and neither of us can even think of running away. Fellow Taoist Huang, please don't harm me. Qing Tong added another sentence. It's a big honor for Mr. Huang Daoyu to be able to ask Mr. Yin Guan to pay for a drink. Huang Shi smiled heartily and said, that's because Qin Jianxian is approachable and has nothing to do with my reputation. This trip to Wudong Mountain was not in vain. I also got an extra Taoist friend from Senior Qing Tong. Isn't it the same treatment as my ancestor? When I went back to the family ancestral hall to offer incense to the hanging portrait, I had to say said. Qing Tong exclaimed, why don't fellow Taoist Huang go to Luapa Mountain to be a guest? Huang Shi wondered, why? Xiego chuckled and said, he has sharp edges and corners and speaks straightforwardly. Huang Shi asked, am I really capable? Isn't Luapa Mountain closed and still accepting guests? Xiego said, whether we can seal the mountain, whether we can accept guests, is not a matter of our mountain master's word? Huang Shi exclaimed, with one heart and one mind, Qin Jianxian is very prestigious. It's not that Huang Shi deliberately said something nice, but Huang Shi knows very well that people in a big family or sect have complicated hearts, with their own misunderstandings and grievances growing like overgrown weeds. On the other side of the room, Qin Pingan said, everyone can come in. Xiego quickly made up for it, Luoluo Mountain is not a one-word palace. After entering the room, Qin Pingan sat down and took the apprenticeship tea from Deng Jianping. Deng Jianping refused to listen and insisted on kneeling and kowtow. After Qin Pingan drank the tea, he became the master and apprentice. Xiego was counting his fingers, silently counting how many disciples the mountain master had now. Deng Jinxiao raised the back of his hand to wipe away his tears. The woman had never been so happy. Qin Pingan put down his teacup and said with a smile, Deng Jianping will return to Aquarius continent with me. Grandmaster Deng, what do you think, fellow Taoist Huang? Are we going to Luapa Mountain to sit together? Deng Jinxiao frowned and said, Qin Jianxian, don't call me Grandmaster Deng. Just call me xuanhuan. She almost forgot that Qin Pingan was a genuine kung fu martial artist. Not long ago they had a fist fight with Pushen Huang, and they had become quite attached to each other in private. Yi Yunyun bluntly said that she was able to stay at the level of Kung Fu, thanks to Qin Pinggan's boxing lesson. Yi Yunyun was teaching boxing rather than asking about boxing, and Deng Jianxiao knew the importance of it. Huang Shi said, "We originally planned to send Jianping to Wutong Mountain, and then continue downstream to Latangjiezhu, all the way to Kashandu on the seaside, and then take a cross-continental ferry to Nampaswazu to meet a few current friends with whom we have family connections." Dojo. Qin Pinggan nodded. "Then you can follow the planned itinerary. Anyway, Luoluo Mountain is not long, and we are waiting for you two to visit us at any time." Of course Xuanhuan wanted to accompany Jianping for a longer distance, and it would be best to send her brother to Luoluo Mountain. But for such a big matter she still listened to Huang Shi. Huang Shi is indeed better at getting along with the immortal masters and sects on the mountain. Qin Pinggan said, "Then let me talk to fellow Taoist Qing Tong about some personal matters first. You have to say goodbye for now, but you can also chat for a few more words. In half an hour we will meet at the foot of the mountain." Huang Shi was fine. Just when Deng Jianping was alone with Qin Pinggan in the house, Senior Qing Tong had already told them a place suitable for siblings to talk. It was a small pavilion on the cliff that was best for enjoying the scenery. The pavilion had clouds on its forehead. Pass. After Huang Shi and the others left, Qin Pinggan handed over a piece of paper. Qing Tong took the piece of paper covered with small regular script and asked doubtfully, "Really?" Qin Pinggan glared. "How can it be difficult for me to be stopped by such trivial matters? Talent is flowing like a spring and am afraid of it myself. Who can stop it?" Xiego laughed heartily. Once she was in a good mood, she didn't care whether Qing Tong pretended to be in the 14th realm or not. Qin Pinggan laughed at himself. "I even had the idea of accepting a disciple as my master. I almost said it on the steps of the mountain road earlier." Xiego was really shocked now, and Qing Tong was even more surprised. On the mountain road to the small pavilion, Deng Jianping took the lead and said with a smile, "Master talked to me a lot, and also taught me a truth that I will keep in mind." Huang Shi joked, "What's the golden truth? Can I take advantage of it and listen to it?" The embroiderer elbowed again, and this time Huang Shi, who was very familiar with it, blocked it with her palm. The embroiderer elbowed her again. "Hey, I'll block it again," so skillfully that Deng Jianping, who was his brother-in-law, felt distressed. Deng Jianping said, "The truth is very simple, just one sentence: human life is rare, and a gentleman will not save it." Huang Shi nodded and agreed. "This kid Jianping really likes to get into trouble. Qin Jianxian is advising you to cherish your life and don't die casually." Deng Jianping was non-committal. "In fact, Master also said a few words at the end. It is the principles that your Master Qi taught me back then, and I will pass them on to you today. It just so happens that I haven't left the town yet and you haven't gone to the town yet. You haven't gone up the mountain yet and you're still outside the mountain." Xuanhuan asked tentatively, "Jianping, I'm going to tell you something from my heart, do you want to listen?" Deng Jianping took a deep breath, looked determined, nodded and said, "Sister, I've been waiting for this sentence for a long time." Huang Shi smiled and said, "Hey, the implication is that you are complaining about my sister for not taking the initiative to chat with you? It's so wonderful to turn an army against you with one hand." Deng Jianping's face turned red. He was not good at talking and was holding back too much. Xuanhuang's elbow was quite powerful, but Deng Jianxing grabbed her arm and walked forward quickly together. Huang Shi held the back of his head with both hands, slowed down, walked behind his siblings, looked around, saw the wind and earth were beautiful, then looked up at the sky. Wow, what a good weather. He did not enter the pavilion, but squatted on the edge of the cliff from a distance, occasionally glancing at the pavilion secretly from the corner of his eye. I don't know what the siblings were talking about, but I saw that Xuanhuan finally cried for the first time. The grievance was on her face but not in her heart. Huang Shi lowered his gaze and saw someone on the other side of the mountain road, wearing a green shirt and long coat, holding a hiking pole. Reminds me of a saying that above all the martial arts in the world, Cao Cao dressed in white is dressed in green. Huang Shi smiled knowingly and went to visit Cao Ci when he had the opportunity. How strong must this guy be to make Qin Pinggan lose several boxing matches in a row without winning? Qin Pinggan took Xiego down the mountain first. No matter how arrogant Qing Tong is, it is only polite to send him to the mountain gate. On the way down the mountain I met several groups of monster monks who were going up the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, the goddess of the Wutong Mountain Ceremony Department was responsible for entertaining the guests, and the monks from the patrol and hunting department were responsible for driving them away. Seeing the mature and prudent old man, Qin Pingan took the initiative to clasp his fists, and the latter clasped his fists in return. After both parties nodded, they smiled and left. Needless to say, in life, east, west, north and south go their separate ways. Qing Tong remembered this scene in his heart. And there was that foxy girl who was surrounded by the stars. When she saw the guest in green shirt, she smiled brightly and extended her hand to say hello. Brother June, we meet again. We are quite destined, right? But she muttered a little bit. For some reason, there was an indistinguishable male and female monk in green clothes next to the girl in the mink hat. She was really a beauty. Chen Ping's arrangement turned a deaf ear. The female cultivator became more and more enthusiastic as she talked. This is Lishan. Why, you didn't pass the test at the Wudong Mountain Ceremony Department, or you just got rejected? Do you want me to give you a favor? Chen Pingan smiled and asked. The person next to me is the Patriarch Qingyu of Wudong Mountain. When I go down the mountain he sees off the guests. Who do you think needs help and who intercedes? The female cultivator and her companions burst into laughter. She even covered her heart, her eyes were as charming as silk, and she said sweetly, Brother June is good-looking and his words are even more interesting. Do you want to be friends with my sister? Qin Pingan laughed it off. Qing Tong remained silent and kept walking. He just turned his head and glanced at the group of who had defected to him. Xiego gloated and said, Yellow mud is stuck to my crotch. Qing Tong's face turned darker when he heard this. Qin Pingan held a hiking stick in his hand. He poked the ground lightly with the bamboo stick, making a loud sound, and said in his heart, It is good to let the local demon clan in Tonggishao have a place to live. If Wudong Mountain can change the customs, it will be even more green. Fellow Taoist friends have a lot of merit. Qing Tong nodded, Do your best. Qin Pingan said, It's not just about trying your best, you must do it well. You have to have this intention first. Qing Tong said, Be taught. Qin Pingan smiled and said, When you first establish a sect there will definitely be a lot of things and a mess. Everything is difficult at the beginning, so don't be discouraged. I believe you will find the trick soon. If you have any questions, please send more letters to Qingping. Jianzhong and Dafu Academy are the ones, and I have a personal relationship with Wenyu, the deputy headmaster of Tianmu Academy. I will write a letter and ask him to help you keep an eye on it. Don't worry, there will always be a bright future in another village. Qing Tong hummed. On a whim, he said that he wanted to establish a sect, but he really had the sign of Wudong Mountain. A large number of demon monks were pouring into the land every day, and Qing Tong was really beating his heart. When they arrived at the mountain gate, they waited patiently for Deng Jianpain and the others to meet here. Chen Pingan looked up at the memorial arch list book and said with a smile, Is it written by Mr. Qing Shan? It seems that his skill is not as good as that of my old cook who has more gold and stone spirit. Qing Tong smiled and said, I'll make do with it. Xiego clicked his tongue, he couldn't speak so he didn't talk much to that old Jia. Qin Pingan said, Go back first, so don't wait with us. Qing Tong turned around and went up the mountain. Deng Jianpain went down the mountain alone and came to Qin Pingan and Xiego. He smiled and said, Master, Xiexia, my sister and brother-in-law will spend more time in the mountains. Qin Pingan nodded, handed the green bamboo stick in his hand to Deng Jianpain, and said with a smile, Handmade bamboo stick, an ordinary object, don't dislike it. Deng Jianpain was stunned and took the hiking pole with both hands. Several groups of monster monks who were drinking in the shop at the foot of the mountain were still queuing up to record their files. I heard that the goddess in charge of the ceremony department was a nascent soul realm water goddess from the old dynasty, and the one who was the patrolling department, the top spot, was actually a martial artist at the top of the far-traveling realm. But including the two of them, everyone who had already arrived at Wudong Mountain with official hats looked respectful, waiting for the handsome monk wearing a green robe. Qing Tong's face was indifferent and he continued to climb the mountain without stopping. He just said, Keep busy with your work. The charming female cultivator and the others were stunned on the spot as if struck by lightning. I begged and begged a lot, just asking that this person be the famous Jade Patriarch, but the problem is that he seems to be it. Absolutely true. Qing Tong hesitated for a moment, then turned around and pointed at a certain old man, and told the ceremony department to record his name directly in the genealogy without reviewing his resume. The old man, who was inexplicably destined to be promoted by the Department of Rites and Ceremonies, was in a daze for a moment. After the Patriarch Qingyu, who had opened the golden mouth, left, instead of saying thank you to the founder, he suddenly ran out for a distance and headed towards the foot of the mountain. Looking up into the distance, it's a pity that the green shirt that the old man only thought was ordinary was no longer visible. Just because the old man was extremely sharp-eyed and attentive, he remembered that Patriarch Qingyu sent guests down the mountain. As the host and the head of a sect, he was not walking in the middle, but on the left and right with the girl in the mink hat. Who is it? It can't be him, right? How can it be? A little girl noticed something strange, ran over, tugged on the old man's sleeve and asked softly, "Grandpa, what's wrong?" The old man smiled and said, "It's nothing. I must have made a mistake." The little girl smiled coquettishly. "Where did it go?" The old man said in his heart, "It got stuck on a name." The little girl looked puzzled. "Which name?" The old man rubbed the child's head, fearing that he would scare the child if he said it, and said softly, "It's just a name with many identities." On the road outside the mountain, the disciple asked, "Master, I'm still curious about that truth. Can you explain it to me?" The master replied, "There may be people like Lu Xianying and Qin Pingan in the city." Deng Jianpain tightened his grip on the green bamboo stick and nodded vigorously. "There must be some. There are some in Suijia City and there will be some elsewhere." Xiego whispered, "Mountain Master, I can't help myself in this scene, so I just want to write a limerick." Qin Pingan said, "Stop, please thank the second seat and put away this magical power." Xiego muttered, "I can't stop it. Besides, I only want to come up with half of it." Qin Pingan said helplessly, Okay, whatever you want." "Thanks to the dog, haha," he said, show your ugliness," with a proud face and shouted at the top of his lungs. Landscapes change everywhere and travelers are unaware of them. Qin Pingan let out a sigh and said it was not bad. Xiego couldn't stand the praise and turned his nostrils to the sky. Deng Jianpain became more and more relaxed. The master of the mountain and the second minister had a really harmonious relationship. After walking to a secluded place in the mountains, Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Then let's drive on with our swords and catch up, Jianping. They'll teach you the 18 stops of sword chi on the way." "Thank you, dog, for rubbing your hands." Deng Jianpain was worried. 3 sword lights suddenly rose from the ground. The first figure was the same color as the blue sky, and the picturesque mountains and rivers of the earth were beneath his feet. "The road is like the blue sky. You all ask me my name. I am the landscape master of Qingdu, and I am Qin Pingan, the mighty swordsman." Sword of Coming Chapter 1134. At dusk, there were large fire clouds and there was a river on the earth, winding like a golden snake. The 3 sword lights dragged out long flowing fireflies, and wherever they went, there was a thunderous roar in the sea of clouds. Deng Jianpain learned the luck method of the 18 stops of sword chi neither quickly nor slowly. Not fast, compared to the outstanding swordsman geniuses at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, but not slow, probably because Qin Pingan was at the bottom. Qin Pingan did not treat Xiego as an outsider. She was a typical person who could master it as soon as she heard it. She quickly practiced it several times, and her sword energy was running without any stagnation. In terms of sword training qualifications, Ning Yao and Xiego are indeed the only ones among geniuses. After Xiego learned this skill, he praised the foundation of the Great Wall of Sword Chi. This put pressure on Deng Jianpain, who thought he had not yet truly mastered the technique, and asked Qin Pingan in his heart if his qualifications were not good enough. Qin Pingan was speechless for a moment. "Who do you want to compare your qualifications with? But you want to compare with Xiaxishi." On the way to ride the wind, Xiego was a little envious of the green bamboo stick. "Mountain Master, can you also give me a hiking stick? We are all people who write landscape travel notes every day." Qin Pingan declined politely. "No need, you are not a nosy person." Xiego did not give up and vowed, "I can take more care of him in the future." Qin Pingan said bluntly, "Is there a possibility that it would be better to ignore the noisy things you encounter?" Xiego was a little depressed, humming haha, and extended his fists, making countless holes or straight lines in the sea of clouds. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "If you are really greedy, whenever you go out alone and feel that you have taken care of 1 or 2 other things, you can ask me for help when you come back to the mountain." However, Qin Pingan didn't think Xiego would be interested in this thing. After all, there are never fewer people, things that I miss today and forget when I wake up tomorrow. Qin Pingan turned to Deng Jianpain and said, "We will take a short rest at Qingjing Mountain, and then we will continue on our way. We will neither cross the sea with a sword nor take a ferry. I will teach you an ancient secret 3-mountain talisman that can instantly shrunk to the limitless land, travel across continents. Your current realm is the golden elixir, which may be a bit difficult, but with me and Xiego by your side the problem won't be too big. When you land at Nanue of Aquarius continent, your soul will be stirred just right. It can also examine the subtleties of your soul and the yang and yin gods to see if there are any gaps that need to be checked and filled. After teaching the talisman and the know-how, Qin Pingan carefully explained to Deng Jianping the rules and taboos on the use of the three-mountain talisman. Finally, he told him that the Jianqi Shiba stop and the three-mountain talisman are both secrets of Luoluo Mountain and should not be disclosed to others easily. Give way. Deng Jianping naturally kept it in mind. It seems that before going to the mountain, I only feel that the mountains are majestic. After entering the mountain, I realize that there are gods on the top of the mountain. Xiego said from the bottom of his heart. The mountain master really missed it. Deng Jianping's qualifications are average, but he is very similar to the ancient Taoist priests. He has a tenacious heart for the Tao and a pure heart for attaining the Tao. As long as he gets enlightened one day, he will be able to practice swordsmanship quickly. Qin Pingan smiled and said, then you can give me some more advice in the future. Anyway, I want to kidnap Chai Wu to be my successor. If I have the chance, let Jianping listen. If I teach two people the same content, I will make a profit. Xiego knew that his mountain master was embarrassed by his direct descendant, and he laughed and said, the mountain master can't teach a genius and I can't teach someone who is not a genius. They complement each other. What a down-and-out mountain cow. Qin Pingan laughed and said, I've seen flatterers before, but I've never seen you flatter me with such a tricky angle. Although Deng Jianping couldn't hear their heartfelt exchanges, he noticed their subtle expressions from the corner of his eye. He guessed that Master and Xianxia were talking about something big. Deng Jianping sighed again. The atmosphere in Luolu Mountain is so good. Xiego asked for no reason, Mountain Master, you are still so young, and you already have Zhao Shuxia as a close disciple of boxing. Isn't Deng Jianping the last direct disciple you will receive in Kendo? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, now there are 7 direct disciples. Let's try to have more than 10 direct disciples one day. No matter how many there are, there is no need. Cui Dongshan, Pei Qian, Chao Qingling, Zhao Shuxia, Guizhuzhou, Ningji, Deng Jianping. Among the 7 students and disciples, only Pei Qian and Zhao Shuxia were actually learning boxing from Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan thought of something and felt that he must remind Deng Jianping, you have a junior brother named Cui Dongshan, who is the first master of Qingping sword sect. In the future, if he wants to protect you for a long time or something like that, I want to have a heart-to-heart talk with you about life aspirations, etc. Just ignore him and just move out of master. You can also complain to senior sister Pei and senior brother Chao. Although Deng Jianping didn't know what was going on, he still agreed honestly. During this period, Qin Pingan received a letter from Fei Jian. In Luoluo Mountain, Xiego will not only wander around with the white-haired boy, no matter whether it is a sudden rain, the new moon is like a frost, or the moon is like frost, and the new moon is like a hook, he only knows the girl in the mink hat who does not know what home is. He also likes to chat with the little girl in black, listen to the unscripted bragging of the kid in green, and go shopping in the mountainous market with the girl in pink skirt. Landing at the edge of Qingjing Mountain, Qin Pingan slowed down and walked towards the main mountain where Xianhu Palace is located, allowing Deng Jianping to regain his composure. Qin Pingan was an old acquaintance at Xianhu Palace, and soon a Taoist priest from the lower court went to the main mountain palace to watch and report. In the entire Qingjing Mountain area, foreign Taoists are allowed to build grass and qingqing on the peaks. They only need to prepare some local products during the holidays and talk to the Xianhu Palace. In his early years before the Taoist priest from Xianhu Palace moved to Aquarius Continent, he was not so easy to talk to. After moving back to Qingjing Mountain, many measures became grand. Taoism has always placed more emphasis on nourishing the body than the mind. On the way to the mountains, it is common to see Taoist priests doing qi nurturing kung fu to strengthen the body. The movements may seem slow, but they are completed in one go. Onlookers, whether they are practicing martial arts or practicing qi, will find it pleasing to the eye. Deng Jianping hesitated to speak. Xiego couldn't stand this. The elders were so unhappy, so she wanted to make some remarks. Qin Pingan guessed Deng Jianping's thoughts and asked with a smile, do you want to ask about Chao Ci? Deng Jianping looked embarrassed, but nodded honestly and admitted the matter. Xiego gave a thumbs up and praised, a heroic man, a real hero. He just became a disciple and asked his master about someone who had lost several games in a row. Why do you want to help the master avenge you? Big ambition. Deng Jianping became more and more ashamed. Qin Pingan thought for a while and said, we don't need to know Chao Ci, meet and talk to him, let alone ask about boxing. We all know that he must be a proud man. Deng Jianping nodded. A pure martial artist, one after another, his deeds are completely equivalent to those of immortality. Outsiders can imagine Chao Si's demeanor. Qin Pingan added, after you get to know Chao Si really well, you will be surprised how he can be so arrogant and calm. Deng Jianping was surprised. Master actually respected Chao Si, a peer of his age, so much? Remember in my hometown in the north over in Juluzhou, the martial arts fighters would not accept defeat even if they were defeated. Even if they were convinced, they would not be convinced verbally. The common sense of the martial artist Chao Si, the open-mindedness of the sword cultivator Chou Miao, the gentle pragmatism of the Confucian scholar, etc. Qin Pingan would sincerely admire them, and of course the land wine fairy Lu Jinglong. Xiego patted his heart gently. Mountain master, in this way Chao Si is very similar to me. He doesn't show off his appearance when he goes out and is approachable. Deng Jianping was in a strange mood and plucked up the courage to ask, Master and Chao Si are both enemies and friends on the road to martial arts? Qin Pingan was silent for a long time. Regarding this matter, he confided his feelings for the first time and said slowly, I want to win him, but I am afraid he will lose. Deng Jianping couldn't understand Qin Pingan's thoughts for a while. Xiego helped the mink hat and explained on his behalf, I really want to win. I am a martial arts student. Who doesn't want to be the first and who is willing to be second? If you don't want to win, I'm afraid that the highest point of martial arts is already under my feet, and that's the end of it. If I am strong, there are still stronger people in the higher places in front of me, and this avenue has not yet reached the top and I can continue to walk on it. I don't really like learning boxing, I can't say that. Deng Jianping was not stupid after all. He quickly noticed a bit of linguistic problem, and asked, I am number one, can't I continue to reach higher levels of martial arts? Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. Xiego sighed, so you are not a martial artist. You practice Taoism on your own and seek martial arts from outside. A world without old enemies and bitter opponents is boring. You have become an adult bullying a bunch of children. Qin Pingan said frankly, in the final analysis, I still don't have the confidence to win against Chao Si. Xiego turned sideways and walked away. He raised his hands like Xiaomi Li and raised his thumbs towards his mountain master, massive. Qin Pingan smiled and said, don't be too jealous when drinking. Xiego laughed heartily. Wei Xian was a bit amused. He often said that Chai Wu's aptitude was as good as his ability to drink, which made Chai Wu reach the Yupu realm in one step, but he was more confused than anyone else. I heard that Master Qin of Luapa Mountain had come to visit again. The Taoist priest in Jianghu Palace suddenly felt complicated. The master of the palace did not seem to have started refining elixirs recently. The master of the temple, Lu Yong, was fishing beside the old dragon pond with a Taoist boy who was his disciple. Zhao Zhu, a disciple named xianxia, came here to report the news. Zhao Zhu is the proud disciple that Lao Zhenren has high hopes for, and the little Taoist boy is Zhao Zhu's most valued personal disciple. The child was personally brought up the mountain during his travels a few years ago. He is kind-hearted and innocent. He has been practicing Taoism in the mountain for only 5 years. Lu Yong often taught Taoism in person, saying that the child was very patient and suitable for alchemy. The little Taoist boy had a simple mind. The Taoist priests in the temple all said that the master had an irresistible relationship with the young hermit official. Since the master was the guest of Luapa Mountain, he naturally felt close to Qin Jianxian. Being held by his master, the child raised his head and asked seriously, Master, do we still have the elixirs in stock in the temple? Don't let Master Qin go back empty-handed. Lu Yong looked embarrassed and gave a rough explanation. There are many rules in alchemy, and it must pay attention to the right time, place and people. If any of them are missing, a clever woman will be in a difficult situation. Zhao Zhu gently patted the child's bun and hesitated to speak. The old man twisted his beard and pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, the child happens to be with Pindao at this moment, and Yingguan happens to go up the mountain at this time. It is the fate of this child. You and I don't have to be pretentious. Zhao Zhu nodded when he heard this, and the haze between his brows faded a bit. Lu Yong went out to entertain guests with several Taoist priests in charge. Qin Pingan bowed his head and said with a smile on his face, don't worry, I'm just passing by. I'm just asking for a drink. I'm not asking for elixirs and I'm not asking for autumn wind. The old man laughed loudly and reached out to grab Qin Pingan's arm. A bad guest comes to the door. A bad guest comes to the door. As soon as they meet, they beat around the bush and scold the host for being stingy. Deng Jianping saw this scene in his eyes, and it can be seen that the relationship between Luolu Mountain and Qingjing Mountain is extraordinary. They had passed by the Qingjing Mountain boundary before, but they did not climb the mountain. The brother-in-law mentioned it casually, saying that this place is rich in Taoism and uniquely blessed by nature, and it is a rare place where dragons emerge. Qin Pingan introduced Deng Jianping's identity as his direct descendant. Lu Yong and the Taoist priests naturally congratulated him sincerely. It was a great blessing for the young man to be able to study swordsmanship and practice Taoism under Yingguan. Zhao Zhu, who is a down-and-out mountain guest, also told the story of his apprentice, Ganxing, who has no nickname yet. The little Taoist boy did not have stage fright, and explained to Qin Jianxian that it was the prosperity of the heart, not the heart of the mood. Xiego said abruptly, "Mountain Master, it's strange. The kid next to Zhao Keqing is still good at cultivating Taoism. Why is the death energy on his body so heavy and entangled? It seems to be quite heavy and has been entangled with numerology. After dealing with it, compare trouble. Of course I can kill this death energy with a sword, but it will hurt the child's Dao roots. It would be better if fellow Taoist Chunyang is here." Qin Pingan actually saw the strange aura in the little Taoist boy. The human body is like a temple. If the gods don't occupy it, wild ghosts will come and grab the territory. Over time, it will become like a temple of obscenity and go to the sidelines. It's okay if you don't go up the mountain to practice Taoism. As the ordinary people may be a bit unlucky, but after entering the Qinghu Palace, they are in conflict with the invisible and thick local Taoism. Fortunately, Qingjing's mountains, clouds and water are light and clear, and the earth's atmosphere is mellow, so the two sides will not fight, but just it's like quarreling all the time. If it goes on for a long time, the child will be exhausted and become more and more weak and weak. It seems that the old man has tried to remedy the situation, but in the end he only treats the symptoms but not the root cause. I'm afraid if it continues he will have to be sent to hospital. The child has gone down the mountain. Xiego asked, "Isn't Qinghu Palace good at refining Yuhua pills? Isn't it right to give the right medicine?" Qin Pingan said, "I am afraid that I have already eaten so that the little Taoist boy can maintain his current situation." Xiego asked, "The mountain master wants to take action? Are you sure?" Qin Pingan said, "After all, it's a very important matter, so I have to make some temporary preparations." Xiego grinned. Since the mountain owner said so, it was very safe. Xiego turned to Deng Jianping and said something serious. "Jianping, we mountain masters know a lot, learn slowly. We, the Taoists, have worked hard to learn from Taoism. Don't enter Baoshan and return empty-handed." The suffix of "ah" is added to the name. I don't know who brought this trend to the mountain. Anyway, Xiego found it very palatable. Deng Jianping nodded vigorously, and as he traveled far and wide with his sword, he became more and more respectful to this young girl. Highly talented, good-tempered, and broad-minded. Qin Pingan first asked Zhao Zhu about the child's birth date, then bent down, smiled with the little Taoist boy named Ganxing and said, "Stretch out your hand." The ignorant little Taoist boy stretched out his hand. Qin Pingan first took the child's hand, weighted gently and touched the bones. Then he put his fingers together and wrote a word on the child's palm, "Edict." The words on the palm of my hand shone with golden light and disappeared in a flash. The sound of gold and jade vibrates loudly at the same time. Qin Pingan said silently in his heart, "Retreat." Qin Pingan retracted his hand like a kind elder, rubbed the child's head and said with a smile, "I live in a quiet mountain, and I am a Taoist who is full of energy and practices hard." The little Taoist boy nodded blankly. The child was inevitably doubtful. He looked up at the man with a gentle smile. With such a good temper, was he really a swordsman who could kill everyone? "I heard that there is a landscape minister who has made great contributions in the Qingjing mountain area in my family. He has been protecting the mountain tops diligently for hundreds of years. Must be informed in advance just to avoid this hidden official. My master tried to persuade me several times but to no avail." Qin Pingan spoke to Lao Jinren and Zhao Zhu from the bottom of his heart. "For the time being, I am just using talismans to stabilize Ganxing's mind. The words of the imperial edict are one talisman with 3 meanings, and the mountains and rivers are thunderous. I try to take a gentle path and don't dare to let the child live in a small world." The movement was too loud. "So Zhao Zhu needs to take Ganxing to Aquarius continent later, and then go directly to Fuyao Foot to find me, where my temporary dojo is now." The old man bowed his head and thanked me. "Thank you, Master Qin." Zhao Zhu asked his children to follow him and thanked Shanju Qin. The child was very happy when he heard that he would soon be able to go down the mountain to play and take a long trip. In the Qinghu Palace, Qin Pingan didn't even drink. He chatted for a few words and then stood up to leave. The so-called small talk is not all trivial matters and polite greetings, but more a matter of mentality and position. For example, Qin Pingan asked Lao Jinren what they thought of the old monks and old sects in the south of Aquarius continent. Lu Yong also wanted to let the disciples of Zhao Zhao's generation go out to experience and practice with the juniors, so along the central route a trip to do is a good choice. In addition, Qingping Jianzong, Taipingshan de Quan Dynasty, and Jade Guizhong are all places you must go to. The little Taoist boy's face was flushed, and he looked like he wanted to speak but didn't dare. Qin Pingan smiled and asked, "Ganxing, what's the matter?" The little Taoist boy secretly glanced at his master and master. The old master stroked his beard and smiled encouragingly, saying, "That's it. Master Chen's visit to our Qinghu Palace is just a visit from his own relatives." Trail Tong said, "Qin Jianxian, let me tell you something. We have a mountain protector who is from a local demon tribe. He seems to be very afraid of you. As soon as he heard that you were mountain climbing, he went out to relax again." Qin Pingan didn't know whether to laugh or cry and asked curiously, "Lao Lu, fellow Taoist Xianxia, didn't you tell this worshipper about the situation in Luapa Mountain?" Zhao Zhu was helpless. "I told you it's useless. Our mountain protector has a simple mind and likes to accept death." Not only did he not listen to the advice, but he also said that we were only familiar with Qin Pingan and Master Qin. In fact, he was not familiar with the hidden people of the Sword Qi Great Wall. "I'm not familiar with the official. When the time comes, the man surnamed Chen will attack him fiercely. He will not be able to run away. Not only will he lose his life, he will also cause the relationship between Qinghu Palace and Luo Luoshan to be in trouble. If he can't do it, he might as well hide every time. Then someone named Chen can't come to Qingjing Mountain as a guest every 2 days." Qin Pingan couldn't help but laugh and joked, "It sounds reasonable." The old man laughed loudly and said, "I don't blame those who don't know." Xiego was even more happy. Didn't he know that our mountain master has 2 flying swords called Chui and 15? Qin Pingan glanced at Xiego, and the girl in the mink hat tilted her head habitually, and her eyes suddenly became clear. Qin Pingan had no choice but to ignore Xiego. Anyway, she had a big heart and she was face to face, so she said directly to the child, "Ganxing, you can tell the mountain guard that the second priest next to me is a wild sword cultivator. She, the Taoist companion, also has the same identity." Ganxing nodded. "Qin Jianxian, I understand." Xiego suddenly showed his teeth and claws and made faces to scare the child. Ganxing remained motionless, just curious what was she doing. Xiego was annoyed at first, but then he became happy. "Hey, it's not good to be too beautiful. You can't even scare the children." Before leaving, Qin Pingan gave the little Taoist boy a small pocket sword, which was temporarily forged. He smiled and said, "It's a custom in my hometown. The master who forged the sword will use his own experience and the child's personality and temperament to make the sword. The breath sends out different small swords which are either fairy magic weapons or good omens. Almost every household needs them. You can keep them in your study or carry them with you." Then when Deng Jianping sacrificed the 3 mountain talisman, they crossed the continent in 1 step and went straight to the top of Nanyue Mountain in Aquarius continent. At the Qinghu Palace, the old master smiled and asked for a small sword from the child. The sword was engraved with a line of text, which had a very good meaning. It looked like the handwriting of the young Yingguan, which was correct. "I am good at cultivating the aura of awe-inspiring people." Seeing how much his master couldn't put it down, the little Taoist boy reminded him, "Master, remember to return it to me?" The old man handed the small sword back to the child and said with a smile, "Stingy little kid. How could the little Taoist boy be afraid of his master?" He carefully put away his sword and made a face. Among the 5 mountains of Aquarius continent, only Zitong Mountain, the southern mountain, has only one mountain named Saiji Mountain, which is the Crown Prince's mountain. Fan Junmao not only took the name Tsuewei for himself, but was recognized and canonized by the Confucian Temple. He also had the unexpected joy of receiving a plaque titled, "Green Mountains in the World." And this plaque hangs high at the archway at the foot of the mountain. It is in line with Fan Junmao's acting style, which is high profile and public, without being subtle or pretentious. There is an endless stream of pilgrims coming here to pay their respects. Without exception, they will stop here and look up at the plaque. Many elders will also teach their children how to read. On the roadside, there was a young man with a sword squatting and retching, holding a bamboo stick with one hand. Standing next to him was a man with arms and sleeves and a girl in a mink hat. Xiego said, The foundation is indeed a bit weaker than expected. Qingjing Mountain is at the northern end of Tongye Continent, and Nanyue Zitong Mountain is at the southernmost edge of Aquarius Continent. In addition, Xiego was also responsible for helping Deng Jianping stabilize his Tao Qi during this process, so this cross-continental journey with the three mountain talisman was swim. The water is relatively large. Qin Pingan said, before Jianping was weak he was mostly wandering around. It is not easy to have the physical foundation he has now. They can stay here for as long as they have to burn incense. The last time there was a meeting in the imperial study room of the Great Li capital, Fan Junmao served as a lobbyist for the southern countries. He was rather lame and not very competent. Let's not talk about cultivation but only about official skills. How can Fan Junmao defeat those old foxes like Xin Qin, the Minister of War, and Zhao Duanjin, the Minister of Rights? Once the letter of credence jointly signed by Dali Li and Bing Ministries comes out, how can a certain country's court or a certain immortal mansion dare to go to Dali capital in the north and ask Honglu Temple to help arrange accommodation? Xiego asked, looking for Fan Junmao to catch up on old times? Qin Pingan heard a pun in it and asked, have you dealt with Fan Shanjin's Shinto predecessor? Xiego chuckled, she was more aggressive back then and I wasn't bad either. Isn't this just the bastard's love for Meng Bean? Qin Pingan asked in confusion, then why didn't Fan Shanjun recognize you last time in Lijing City? Xiego and Xiao Mo were in the corridor outside the house at that time. Xiego was arrogant, laughed and said, I almost don't recognize myself now. How could she recognize a passerby who just had a fight? Besides, most people who are not reincarnations of high-ranking gods will lose some memories. And these so-called memories is the key to the throne of the ancient gods. Didn't so-and-so say it? It was Xiaomo's friend, that Lu Laosan, who guessed that an illusory but ubiquitous long river of time is most likely the source of countless trillions of trivial memories. Summary and arrangement. Qin Pingan waved his hand gently, signaling Xiego to stop the topic. Our headmaster Lu is really willing to talk to his friends. Xiego asked, are we just stuck at the foot of the mountain? Qin Pingan said, the last meeting in the imperial study room made her a little embarrassed to come to the stage. It is estimated that even if we let someone inform us, she would still be rejected. Maybe it would be difficult for the female officer of the etiquette department to reply to us. Fan Shinjun just said that she is not here. Mountain. Xiego smiled and said, this is her old temper, so I'm not surprised at all. Qin Pingan joked, there is a big difference in Xie Six's attitude towards Fan Shanjun and Qing Tong. Xiego curled his lips and said, whoever I approve or disapprove does not matter about their background. Unexpectedly, just when Qin Pingan was about to take Xiego and Deng Jianping to stroll in the market near the foot of the mountain, Fan Junmao used a trick and was actually willing to go out to entertain the guests in person. But instead of going up the mountain, Fan Junmao followed the previous direction of Qin Pingan and others, and went to the bustling streets of the market. Along the streets there are incense shops, bookstores, restaurants and inns. Nothing happens on the mountain and the world is at peace. Qin Pingan put his hands on his sleeves and said with a smile, it's rare. Fan Junmao's face was full of irritation, waiting for people, welcoming people and sending them off, official articles, full of nonsense, no time to relax, the etiquette department is full of wine bags and rice bags, anyone dares to take them to the mountain, what's the hindrance to human relations? Isn't the face of my majestic Tsuiwei Shinjun not face? Every day I see this and that, and who I see tomorrow and the day after tomorrow has been arranged and I was asked to review it. Your uncle, they are all things that cannot be dealt with. See you. A few are better than seeing them all. Fan Junmao is indeed depressed. Now the chief officials and managers of various departments in Nanyue are all fighting life and death with her back then. Their moral character is nothing to say, but their ability to handle common affairs is really worrying. Deng Jianping was stunned when he heard this. This famous Lord Tsuiwei has such a distinctive personality. Qin Pingan smiled and said, let's negotiate with the Department of Etiquette first. After 7 or 8 years of being busy like this, it doesn't matter which country you are the emperor or prince of, or whose clan leader or leader you are, you will all be gone. Good people may not be good officials. Of course, it does not mean that official seats must be occupied by bad people. Moreover, many corrupt officials who are good at power actually go there to be honest officials who benefit one party and leave a name in history. As long as they are a gangster, the officialdom, the public practice, the mountains and the mountains are the same, and Confucianism talks about 1,000 ways and 10,000, but still goes back and forth on the word name. In reality, it is a different approach but the same result. It is nothing more than working on human nature and the human heart. As the lord of a mountain with jurisdiction over thousands of mountains and rivers, it is your duty to avoid such complicated etiquette in the early stage. It is too impersonal and it will definitely not work. The etiquette department will also be in trouble. Just wait until others adapt to you. If you are too talkative, it is easy for others to be hard to talk to. After all, the ceremony department is only one of the 20 or so government offices in Nanyue. You can remind them appropriately not to be confused about who is older and who is younger, who comes first and who comes last. Fan Junmao didn't know whether he heard it or not. Anyway, his expression was reluctant. You are now a high official, let me listen to you. Chen Pingan smiled and said, if you really want to save worry, effort, trouble and time, I also have a convenient method. Do you want to listen? Fan Junmao said, you should have said it earlier. Chen Pingan said, you are not worthy of being a divine king. Without an official position you will feel light. Fan Junmao glared, Chen Pingan, have you eaten too much bad food and come up with some bad ideas? Nanyue resigned after receiving the title of god. Fan Junmao would not dare to compete with the Chinese Confucian temple like this if he did not take the rules seriously. Chen Pingan smiled and said, then the next best thing is to find a place inside and outside. If you have a helper who can convince everyone, you can feel more at ease as a hands-off shopkeeper. Fan Junmao said helplessly, where can I find such a powerful person? I am a tiger. Who can I burn incense and make a wish for? Chen Pingan smiled and said, isn't this the answer? Fan Junmao said angrily, I came down the mountain just to relax, not to make any excuses with you. Chen Pingan was non-committal. Xiego suddenly started to get close to him. Junmao, you don't need to use any tricks. You can walk on the street so struttingly that no one will recognize you. At most, you think some girl is not beautiful if she is not beautiful, but you are really good looking. Blessing seems to be somewhat similar to the Tiger Empress. I don't know whether he was fooled by the words Junmao, or because he was offended by the words that followed. In short, Fan Junmao didn't answer anything. Xiego didn't take it seriously. If a person you like has no temper, doesn't it prove that you have a problem with your vision? Fan Junmao asked in his heart, leaving aside our identities, don't you think that the hand of the Dali court has been stretched too far? The old almanac of a country and a continent has been turned over after all. If I remember correctly, Confucianism, do you like to insist that one master should be famous? The Song family of Dali is no longer the orthodox place in the continent. This is also the fault of Xianhu, leaving you with such a mess. He promised to allow the restoration of the country after the war. If this was not mentioned from the beginning, what would have happened back then? Who dares to object? In the entire Aquarius continent, only Song he was still qualified to wear dragon robes. Even if he took a step back and agreed to end the war, now the southern countries must always recognize the greatly imperial court as the suzerain state. Is it better than the current people's hearts are agitated? Since they are domineering, Xianhu and Dali should just stick to it and end up turning to the king's way halfway. What did Xianhu think at the time? He is not the kind of scholar who seeks a posthumous reputation. There is no need at all. Isn't it unnecessary? Chen Pingan hummed in approval and then slowly replied, you were so angry at the time that you may have ignored something I said. Aquarius Island must be mentally prepared for a second war within 10 years. I guess many of you here think I am alarmist. But you are definitely an exception. Fan Junmao nodded. People who are accustomed to a peaceful world will feel that peace is a natural thing. Chen Pingan continued, Song he came to see me in private once on a country road. The two sides had a very open and honest conversation. I once directly asked him if he wanted to restore the territory of the Great Li dynasty at its peak. He probably knew that this issue must be solved. He answered very carefully, hesitated for a long time and finally answered that he really wanted to, but maybe he and the Great Li cavalry couldn't do it. When he said this truthfully, Song he actually used some words and looked at my eyes, want to find my truest inner thoughts. It is normal. After all, I am a person who is used to being an emperor. I asked him, what can Song he do with a country and a half continent, and what can Dali do with a country and a continent? What else could he do? He obviously had a rough idea and his answers were flawless, so I asked him again, what are the things about Aquarius Island that we all regard as habits but are actually wrong? Since he knew that it was hard to deal with them, he couldn't answer them. He said that he wanted to think about it again. I asked him again why the Great Wall of Sword Qi, which had been defended for 10,000 years, could not be defended, and why the Aquarius continent, the smallest territory in Haoranjiuzhou, could block the wild monsters. Did he have any unique ideas? Insights? He was obviously a little nervous, so I said it was just an additional question. You can think about it and you don't have to have an answer. Fan Junmao was silent. Xiego laughed in his heart and said, Jianping, did you hear that Fan Shanjun has been bypassed? She has forgotten the first question she asked. Our mountain master, your new master, is awesome, right? Deng Jianping finally came back to his senses and chewed carefully. Master has finally given the answer without using words. The streets were bustling with traffic. From time to time, Qin Pingan would turn sideways to give way to others, or others would give way to Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan put his hands in his sleeves and said calmly, but in this world, there are too many on the mountain who have become gods and are not human beings. There are especially many south of Chidu. Fan Junmao nodded. People who fear power but not virtue have been as common as the crucian carp crossing the river since ancient times. Up and down the mountain, people should be respected by their power. Qin Pingan changed the topic and said with a smile, I was copying scriptures in an ancient Luzong temple. A group of big pilgrims asked the abbot how to maintain health. The old monk only said that children from rich families have no worries about food and clothing. If they want to keep fit, what do they need? The exquisite knowledge of self-cultivation is just to sit less in sedan chairs and walk more, drink less flour wine and eat more vegetarian food. There is an old tree next to the life-releasing pond in the temple. When the deadwood comes into spring, another layman asked the abbot if it was due to the monk's profound Taoist power. The old monk was indifferent at that time. The answer is water more. Fan Junmao smiled knowingly and said, the real Buddha only speaks ordinary words. Qin Pingan said, we have to continue on our way, so we won't disturb Fan Shanjun from returning to the mountain to continue entertaining guests. Fan Junmao stopped and rolled his eyes and said, even if you are sarcastic, wait and see what my attitude will be when you become the Grand Master of Dali. Ha, a ship goes east and a ship goes west, and the feng shui is different whether it is good or bad. You have to ask the passengers on the downwind ship. Will the wind direction remain the same tomorrow? Xiego quickly held up the mink hat and was shocked. Jianping, what should I do? This woman started to pull one. I suffered the loss of being unprepared. One can't fight her. Deng Jianping said helplessly, Xietzi, she knows. I've never been good at words. Qin Pingan smiled and said, the water waves rise and fall, the wind comes and goes, the environment changes at will, and it remains motionless like a mountain. Fan Junmao laughed it off and went home. Deng Jianping's expression was sincere and his tone was extremely firm. Master, you don't have to ask us to do anything for our master's Taoism and Luapa Mountain, but as disciples we can't completely live without this reward. It's the master's thoughts. The disciple is dull and begs the master to make a request or two, but he is also kind-hearted and focused on working hard. Xiego looked at Deng Jianping with admiration. He usually looked at Deng Jianping and said nothing, but he never thought that he was brave. It's only been a few days since I learned skills from my master, and you're already teaching me how to do things? Qin Pingan thought for a while and said, from now on, I just need to go down the mountain with my sword, travel around the world, make more friends and mind my own business. Mind your own business. Deng Jianping recited it silently in his heart several times. Afterwards, Qin Pingan and the others came to a mountain top near Xianyu County. Going to the county town and knocking on the door of a martial arts gym, Deng Jianping followed his master and found a group of young martial artists practicing boxing and walking, beating their muscles and bones and shouting and drinking. But there was an old man, probably the owner of this small martial arts studio, lying on a wicker chair holding a cattail fan, and actually fell asleep, snoring loudly and loudly. People who pay money to learn martial arts in a martial arts school seem to be accustomed to this. Anyway, there are senior brothers who give guidance, and they are as good as the old-fashioned sayings of the master of the gym. Many young and strong men in the martial arts hall recognize this green-shirt guest. They have been here before and have a good relationship with the master. The master occasionally drinks and brags, and will say that the three of them have traveled together in the world and passed countless mountains and rivers. They joined forces to slay demons on the road and saw many strange things. Back then he was the one who protected the two fledglings, but now it feels good to hear them call him Brother Su. Qin Pingan stretched out his hand to indicate that there was no need to wake up their master. He brought a bamboo chair to the familiar road and sat next to the rattan chair. He leaned back comfortably on the chair, crossed his legs and began to smoke a dry cigarette. The clouds were shrouded in mist and his face was blurred. Several times turning around he wanted to laugh out loud and put the old bearded knight out of bed. He quickly got up to drink, and then told him that I had already contacted Su Zidao, asked for a preface, as well as poems by Bai Yi and Xen Jian. If I am not strong enough, you must not drink a few bowls of wine first. Putting away the dry tobacco stick, Qin Pingan held the back of his head with his hands, straightened his legs, and leaned against the bamboo chair lazily, closing his eyes, wanting to squint for a while and take a break from the busy work. Deng Jianping glanced at Xie Zishi. What should he do? Xiego grinned. It's such a big deal, it's easy to handle. They'll send you to Luo Mountain first. Just leave it to Gon. When Qin Pingan opened his eyes, he was surprised to find that it was dark night and he was covered with a piece of clothing. Deng Jianping must have been at Luolu Mountain, but Xiego was lying on a wicker chair nearby, pretending to be old-fashioned, swinging his cattail leaf fan and enjoying himself. Qin Pingan asked, "How long have you slept?" Xiego was in high spirits. "Just a little while, don't delay things." Qin Pingan let out a sigh. Xiego laughed loudly. "Xiaomo has gone home and is helping Master Su in the kitchen. The two men look very nice in their aprons." Qin Pingan squinted and smiled, leaning on the bamboo chair again. "Then let's wait for dinner." Xiego covered his mouth with a cattail leaf fan and lowered his voice and said, "Mountain Master, it's really not me who is causing trouble. When Master Su saw you sleeping soundly, he called you a brat and scolded you softly many times." Qin Pingan smiled softly and said, "You're afraid he'll scold you when I wake up?" Xiego nodded vigorously. "Who says it's not the case? The road in the world is rough and difficult, but we can be calm if we know each other. The middle-aged will be middle-aged and the old will be old. They all once traveled with sweet-scented osmanthus and wine as a young man. They were drunk, stroking their big beards, wetting their Taoist sleeves and raising their straw sandals." Sword of Coming Chapter 1135. A home-cooked meal and home-brewed wine. During this period, xianxia used a long bamboo pole to pick up a piece of bacon hanging on the patio beam, then went to the vegetable garden to pick some green peppers, and fried a plate of green pepper ham specially for Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan took a chopstick and said it was a little salty. Xianxia asked him to go to the door and squat down to eat. At the dinner table, the girl in the mink hat lowered her head to pick up the food and said vaguely, "Mountain Master Xiaoma, I may need to go back to the wild world. They'll be busy with business and try to get back early." Qin Pingan calmly glanced at Xiaomo. Xiaomo was still sparring with Xianxia and had his sleeves rolled up. The two brothers were so good there. This made Qin Pingan very angry. Besides drinking and practicing swordsmanship, what else can you do? You should know how to do it, but you don't know how to do it at all. Xiego raised his head, his cheeks bulging, and his smile remained unchanged. "Don't worry, it's just a private matter. The old rules are to not get involved in the grudges between the two worlds, and never to embarrass the Mountain Master and Master Bai." Qin Pingan had no expression on his face and kicked Xiaomo under the table. Xiaomo received the reminder from his young master and asked, "When will we leave?" Qin Pingan took a deep breath, almost threw the wine bowl over, and went to Qingming World to find his future. Xiego stretched out his hand and scratched his face. "After dinner, help me clear away the dishes and leave." Xianxia narrowed her eyes and smiled. It was interesting. She was already a mountain qigong practitioner at a very young age, so why did she still have the emotions of a young girl? In the end, Xiego really cleared up the dishes and chopsticks on the table, and was busy in the kitchen for a while before saying goodbye. He walked to the door alone. The girl in the mink hat turned her head, smiled brightly and reminded, "Mountain Master, get ready for hiking." "Stikha." Qin Pingan hummed, "When I return to Luapa Mountain, I will go to the next mountain to chop bamboo." The girl in the mink hat nodded vigorously, turned around and walked towards the door, raised her arm and gave a thumbs up, shaking her head, "No." After thanking the dog for leaving, Qin Pingan sat on the steps and smoked a cigarette. Xiaomo squatted aside in a daze and Qin Pingan was too lazy to speak. Xianxia lay on the wicker chair, shaking the cattail leaf fan and gently patting her abdomen. Qin Pingan was the first to break the silence and asked, "How's it going?" Xiaomo said, "I still need to hand out a sword as if to tell the world. The sword light will travel all the way through the 5 worlds, passing through famous mountains and rivers. Handing the sword itself is the way to achieve it, and when it is sheathed, it is the way to reach the 14th realm." Qin Pingan was puzzled. Xiaomo explained, "It's not about showing off your skills. It takes such a sword to prove that you are a stranger in swordsmanship and you have indeed achieved a high and far sword." Qin Pingan immediately grasped the key. When the sword light passes through the 5 worlds, there will definitely be an expert with strong Taoist power trying to stop it. Xiaomo nodded and said, This move can indeed be easily regarded as a provocation by Taoist masters from all walks of life. Fellow Taoist Bixiao helped me make a rough calculation. In the 5 worlds on Yuming Road, each has an expert blocking the sword, and the number is about 7 or 8. Qin Pingan frowned and asked, if you fail to sheath your sword, does it mean that you have failed in Hedao? Xiaomo smiled and said, that's not the case. According to fellow Taoist Bixiao, I have already crossed the threshold with both feet. Just because I am a sword cultivator, it is like the sword is blocking the door. Qin Pingan thought for a moment and asked casually, does Xiego know this? I thought I was asking an unnecessary question, but Xiaomo shook his head and said, she didn't ask that, so I didn't say anything. Qin Pingan was so angry with this answer that his liver ached, and he even said a few good words. Xiaomo said aggrievedly, sir, if I were really an idiot, I would have handed you the sword in the Houtsai dojo of fellow Taoist Bixiao. Qin Pingan's face softened a bit. There is still hope. Xiaomo said softly, on the mountain after Mr. Zhu reminded me, I already knew that the sword cultivator Bai Jing was very proud, so no matter she is Bai Jing or Xiego now, she doesn't know how to face a little girl whose realm is suddenly higher than hers. To be honest, she doesn't know how to deal with me in the future, so how can I know how to get along with her? So I thought of returning to Luolu Mountain quickly so that I could ask the young master for a few tips. Qin Pingan said helplessly, you should ask the old chef. Xiaomo was even more helpless and said, I asked, but Mr. Zhu said that he is a heartless person. How can he be qualified to teach an infatuated person any truth? To ask him about the love between men and women is to ask blindly. Qin Pingan knocked the cigarette pole against the steps, took out a booklet from his sleeve, and handed it to Xiaomo. Xiaomo flipped through it, looked at it carefully and said, these written records of the landscape are not like those written by her. It seems that the young master has helped to polish them. Qin Pingan handed the manuscript to Xiaomo again. Xiaomo read it and said with a smile, this is hers. As a result, he found that the young master was staring at him fiercely. Xiaomo was confused and had no idea where he had said the wrong thing. Haha, it's so embarrassing that this happened. Qin Pingan and Su Yuanxia looked at each other. Why is the reason so lame? He is indeed a self-proclaimed dog. Su Yuanxia smiled and asked, I have eaten and drank wine. When will Master Qin Dashan leave? Qin Pingan said, the landlord's family has no surplus food. I think the business of the martial arts school is okay? Su Yuanxia waved her hand, gun. If you are busy with this or that, I won't say anything to you. Just don't forget to do the real business. Remember to send invitations to me and Zhang Shanfeng when the time comes. Qin Pingan stood up and stopped talking. Su Yuanxia smiled and said, when the time comes, the seats that Zhang Shanfeng and I will be seated in must not be too far away from each other, as we will lose face. Qin Pingan said, I haven't been to my hilltop yet. Su Yuanxia raised her hand and said, I will go and I probably won't say hello to you. Maybe we'll leave tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow, maybe a little later. In short, this old bearded ranger wanted to dedicate his last trip to Luoluo Mountain to his journey through the mountains and rivers. Qin Pingan walked over and returned the cattail leaf fan to Su Yuanxia. He hesitated again and couldn't speak. Su Yuanxia took the cattail leaf fan and said, after so many years of friendship, there is no need to tell Su Yuanxia anything that is not like Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan finally said nothing. Together they left the boundary of Xianyu County with their swords. On the way, Xiego said in his heart, Xiaomo, it's rare to see the mountain master like this. How should I put it, at a loss to advance or retreat and at a loss? Xiaomo nodded and said, as for Brother Su, the young master has never been very impressive. The mountain owner still hopes that Su Yuanxia will go to Luolu Mountain in his heart, right? That's for sure. Xiego thought for a while and said, Mountain Master, I think Brother Su actually wants to go to Luapa Mountain. He just thinks you are not sincere enough so he can't lose face and is unwilling to nod. Xiaoma felt dizzy after hearing this. Qin Pingan asked doubtfully, is this really true? Xiego Yin said with certainty, the Mountain Master believes in me. I am very accurate in judging people. Brother Su is a man in the world. He is the best face. It's just a matter of 1 or 2 solid words. Qin Pingan said helplessly, it's not like I haven't said similar words before. Xiego waved his hand, that's easy, just tie him up and go to Luolu Mountain. Qin Pingan hesitated and said, isn't it good? Xiegeheo said angrily, Xiaomo is just here to do this. It's the same as robbing women to become village wives. It's the same principle as raw rice and cooked rice. They'll tie up Brother Su and take him to the mountains. They'll I'll bear it when the time comes. I feel bad, just scold Xiaomo with the mountain owner. Qin Pingan said nothing. Xiaomo said from his heart, don't come up with bad ideas. Xiego rolled his eyes and said, Xiaomo, you can't even tell. The mountain master has clearly acquiesced. After that, Xiego made up a reason to thank Go, saying that she saw a beautiful mountain at the foot of the mountain and wanted to whisper something to Xiaomo. The owner of the mountain went first and they followed later. Shanjuchen said so. Xiaozishi said yes, a break is better than a wedding, haha. Xiaomo heard the gang talk between the two of them and always felt that it was wise for him to return to Luo Mountain as soon as possible. After that, Xiaomo and Xiego returned to the Xianyu County Martial Arts Hall in the dark, and found Su Yuanxia who was resting with her eyes closed. One was in the 14th realm, and the other was in the Ascension realm. Together they took a pure martial artist to travel far and wide. Of course it's a no-brainer. Qin Pingan stood at the gate of the archway of Jilin Peak, the main mountain, with his hands in his sleeves looking forward to it. When the mountain master appeared, the Taoist priest Xianwei was just about to finish his work. Xiaomi Li came to the foot of the mountain to deliver a message to Grandmaster Zhong, saying that the old cook had a late-night snack over there. Dian followed me to the mountain and had a meal. I was full of wine and food and my stomach was a little full. It was just right to take a walk down the mountain, so I sat at the gate of the mountain for a while, sighing to myself, recalling the bitterness and sweetness. Now it is really I lived a magical life. Thinking of a book with many dog-eared corners, Xianwei would return to the study to review the past and learn new things. When the mountain master came, Xianwei had to put down the small bamboo chair, even though Qin Pingan said that he was waiting for someone so that Xianwei did not have to stay here. The Taoist Xianwei had been a gatekeeper for such a long time and was very thoughtful. He said that he had nothing to do anyway and could just wait for the distinguished guests with the mountain master. The Taoist Xianwei was a little curious about who he was waiting for. It was rare for the mountain master to go out to entertain guests in person, but there were still a few times, but none of them seemed to be like tonight. It's like waiting for a pretty big shot. After a while, it was Mr. Xiaoma and Xiaozishi who came to the foot of the mountain with a group of people. Xianwei was a little confused. Why did it look like a kidnapping? Qin Pingan's eyes were full of smiles, but he complained, Xiaomo, what's going on? It's outrageous. Su Yuanxia said angrily, that's outrageous. How about asking Xiaomo to send me back to Xianyu? You can do it. Qin Pingan walked forward quickly, and Su Yuanxia raised her head and glanced at the mountain gate archway. Qin Pingan helped introduce, Brother Su Yuanxia. Nianjing, Taoist name Xianwei, is the new mountain master of Xiangshan Mountain. The Taoist priest Xianwei hurriedly greeted the distinguished guest. Su Yuanxia immediately returned the salute with clasped fists and said with a smile, I have met the immortal captain. The immortal captain smiled and said, I've heard about the name for a long time. Previously, the mountain master showed me a landscape travelogue. It was written with great literary talent. It described the peaks and pavilions as spring flowers on the top, as if they were in buns. It was lifelike and beautifully written. When writing about the turbulence of Kongsha Gorge, 9 characters, or, are used in succession, which ordinary people would not dare to think about or use. When writing about the trip to Zhishui and describing the climb to the top, it is quiet and motionless, with the Taishu space, the high sky, you're traveling together, you're so brave. Su Yuanxia's old face turned red, and she didn't know how to say a few polite words for a while. A white-haired boy appeared out of nowhere. He had a pen and paper in his hand and he muttered, We have traveled thousands of miles with each other. We have seen and heard everything. We have recorded everything one by one. We have described everything and our wonderful pens have produced flowers. Qin Pingan took Su Yuanxia to climb the mountain together. Xianwei looked a little regretful and said, Mr. Xiaomo, the late-night snacks at the old cook's place were removed not long ago. Xiaomo nodded and smiled, Let's meet again tomorrow. Xianwei nodded, This is a good thing. With Xiaoma together, tomorrow's midnight snack will be settled. Tonight, the old cook asked Zhong Qian if it is necessary to open the restaurant to Inu Peak where Grandmaster Zhong De teaches boxing tomorrow, so as to save you an extra trip. Zhong Qian was holding a toothpick in her mouth and said that after eating, she would live to be 99 if she walked 100 steps, so there was no need to bother her. It didn't matter if she walked a few more steps. The old cook smiled and asked, Why don't I thank you? While picking her teeth, Zhong Qian said that they were all good buddies, and if they didn't say a few harsh words, the friendship would be in the wine bowl and the vegetable plate. Lieutenant Xian watched and listened. worried whether the old cook would add anything to the meal tomorrow. But if Xiaoma comes with us it will be safe. Xiego said with a smile. Xianhui, why don't you hurry up and give me a heads up when you see the second person enshrining you? Xianhui smiled awkwardly. No problem, Miss Ye always likes to joke about pretending to be a Taoist priest. Xiao Mo frowned and said, don't be ridiculous. Xiego yelped as if his feet were sprained and leaned toward Xiao Mo, but Xiao Mo stretched out his hand to hold down the mink hat, and the girl shook her head with bright eyes. On the other side of the mountain road, as they climbed up the stairs together, Qin Pingan kept raising his hand and pointing, probably telling Su Yuanxia about the situation of the peaks belonging to the Luoluo mountain vassal. The mountain owner was elated and proud, his eyebrows were flying and he was high-spirited. The white-haired but straight-backed old man put his hands behind his back and pointed somewhere along Qin Pingan's hand, occasionally nodding and saying a few words. At the foot of the mountain the two figures were getting farther and farther away, but their laughter was getting louder and louder. Previously, Deng Jianpain was brought to Luapa Mountain by Xiego. He threw it at the sword worship platform and ignored it. He just said that if he felt bored he would go to Qiaoyu Mountain to find happiness. Standing on the sword worship platform on one of the vassal hills, Deng Jianpain, holding a green bamboo staff, was a little confused. It would definitely not be appropriate to rashly find the person named Gon to worship. Soon a child in white walked out of a simple thatched hut, holding a purple sand pot in his hand, and asked in an old-fashioned manner, "Who is this sacred person?" Deng Jianpain was a little embarrassed for a while. He always felt that when he arrived in the Luolu mountain realm, he would say that he was the master's new disciple. The sword cultivator had just separated from the mountain master in Xianyu County, and it was Xie Zishi who sent him here. When Bai Xian heard about Xianyu County he nodded. Now that I know Brother Su, he is definitely not a thief who is so bold as to sneak up the mountain. Now there are so many swordsmen who want to learn from Yingguan, so I have to keep an eye on them. Deng Jianpain became more and more ashamed. Bai Xian glanced at this young man with an unfamiliar face and asked, "Are you also a sword cultivator?" Deng Jianpain nodded and said, "It's a sword cultivator." Bai Xian asked, "How old are you and what level you are at?" Deng Jianpain replied, "You are the golden elixir when you are not confused when you are close to your age." Bai Xian glared and said, "That's right, what a big statement." Deng Jianpain was speechless for a moment. Unexpectedly, the child raised his head and took a sip of wolfberry tea and nodded. "You are the golden elixir at such an old age and your qualifications are indeed a bit lacking. It doesn't matter, hard work can make up for your weakness. Don't put pressure on me as a neighbor, which will lead to instability of Taoism." Deng Jianpain was speechless. Bai Xian thought to himself and said, "Let me introduce you, my name is Bai Xian, Bai Yes Bai Yu Xian Xian." Deng Jianpain could only remain silent. As a result, a figure came quietly and came to Bai Xian's side. As soon as he raised his hand and lowered it, it was a solid chestnut, which made Bai Xian howl. Deng Jianpain was shocked. The girl got straight to the point and said, "Deng Jianpain, are you master's new disciple?" Deng Jianpain was speechless. Guizhuzhou smiled and said, "It's easy to guess. By the way, my name is Guizhuzhou. Like Bai Xian, we both come from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. I am very close to you, Luzhou Beiju. Now we are even closer to each other?" Deng Jianpain came back to his senses, holding the bamboo stick in his arms, lowered his head and clasped his fists. "Deng Jianpain has met senior sister Guo." Guizhuzhou raised his palm with his palm up and said with a straight face, "Junior brother, no courtesy." Bai Xian rolled his eyes. "I am hiding." I never thought that Guizhuzhou didn't reward him with a chestnut and kicked Bai Xian away. He just protected the purple clay pot with both hands. Bai Xian swaggered down the mountain without forgetting to look back at Deng Jianpain. He was so pitiful that he became Guizhuzhius. "Junior brother." Guizhuzhou said, "There are sword cultivators here at the sword worship platform. Did Guzi tell you to learn swordsmanship from Gontang?" Deng Jianpain had no choice but to take the initiative to ignore the term Guzi, and nodded. "Xie Zishi has this plan." Guizhuzhou said, "Then he'll take you to Qiaoyu Mountain first to find the way. You can do whatever you want from now on." Deng Jianpain immediately thanked him. Guizhuzhou laughed. This junior brother looked very similar to Scrofulariaceae and the others. Guizhuzhou took out a talisman sword from his sleeve and explained, "Of course you can use the sword as you like when visiting the hills of your home, but in addition, there is an unwritten old rule in the entire old Liju cave world. Monks control the wind. It is necessary to wear this sword talisman, and our genealogy monks in Luolu Mountain are no exception." Deng Jianpain started to express his thanks again. It turned out that the old deaf man had moved out of the sword worship platform not long ago and officially settled in Huayin Peak. He built a hut himself and brought in bedding. It seemed that Gan Zongfeng planned to stay here for a long time. Although the master here, the chief instructor, is Bai Jing in name, the real preacher is Gan Tang. There was no way Hua Yingfeng lost so embarrassingly in that competition between the Qi master and the martial artist, and most importantly, it was related to whether the old deaf boy could learn some exquisite sword skills from Bai Jing. I have to admit that when it comes to cultivation, there are also different levels of geniuses. The old deaf boy thinks he can't compare to Xiao, let alone Bai Jing. Generally speaking, when you reach the mountain, you will be completely different from the ordinary people outside the mountain. When the Qi practitioner goes down the mountain again, everywhere stands out. But the problem is that on the mountain, there are people who are practicing Taoism all around, and they are afraid of comparing things with others. It is easy for the Taoist heart to become unstable, and even the Taoist heart to collapse. There are many people there. How many people who are new to mountaineering and studying Taoism initially have aspirations higher than the sky, but as time goes by, they disappear into the crowd and become mediocre people with mediocre materials? How can they reach the top of the road? As time goes by, their Taoist aspirations fade away and their spirits are wasted. Almost exhausted, the form and spirit are as withered as old wood. If the old deaf boy is not in the Great Wall of Sword Qi and the young Taoist is not in the 100,000 mountains, where can he be regarded as a hero? In Huayin Peak, today's old deaf boy has a serious expression like the preacher who is sitting in the hall to give a lecture, and he starts to give some enlightened remarks. Everyone needs to know that there are 3 realms of practice. They are on the futon in the dojo. In a battle of wits, in a battlefield of life and death. Outside the house, there were actually 2 shameless martial arts practitioners from Yingyu Peak, Huayin Peak's rival, who were openly listening to the old deaf man preach at the door. The old deaf child didn't care about this trivial matter, and just focused on teaching the 3 realms to the strong and weak ones who were practicing Taoism. The old swordsman just gave a simple example, and the young girls were immediately fascinated. Just because the people mentioned by Gan Chongfeng, whether they are positive models or negative examples, none of them are fuel-efficient lamps. There were Bayin official Nan Shouchen, Firen, and the group of young sword cultivators from the wilderness Jiashan account who were enemies on the battlefield of the Sword Qi Great Wall in the past. Zheng Dafeng crossed his arms across his chest and leaned against the door. He couldn't be more beautiful. He smiled and waved to the house. Unfortunately, no one paid attention to him for the time being. It's okay. Every girl pretends that she doesn't have brother Dafeng in her heart, right? Thin-skinned, I understand. I recall those days when I was the shopkeeper of a wine shop in Feishing City. I had a handsome appearance and a humorous speech. There were many young and old girls passing by on the street who caught a glimpse of her. I wonder how determined I, Mr. Zheng, am to be able to maintain my integrity year after year. Zheng Dafeng whispered carefully to one beside him, Brother Wen, after living here for a long time, you are still a little surprised, right? One replied carefully, if Brother Zheng hadn't dragged me here with him, I wouldn't have dared to come here even to death. One carefully knew that Brother Zheng was informal, but he never thought that he would take him to observe the preaching of the man who was willing to worship him. Although Wen Jingsheng already has the nickname Grandmaster when here in Luapa Mountain and is a close sibling to Zhong Qian, don't forget that Wen Jingsheng, who has a good background, is also a very serious Taoist priest of Lingfei Palace. Zheng Dafeng rubbed his hands and smiled and said, From now on, I will be a guest at Lingfei Palace. Brother Wen, remember to be a good host. Don't be like Wei Bo and hide it just like guarding against thieves. How could Wen Qingxin dare to agree to this casually? After all, Zheng Dafeng is no better than ordinary people, and even a man like Wen Qingxin, who is known for being unruly, often feels inferior to himself. For example, Zheng Dafeng always said that he watched Shan Juqin grow up with his own eyes, but he barely mentioned that he grew up with a handful of urine. Fortunately, there is also the white-haired boy who claims to be the composer of music, who often comes to Yingyu Peak to make trouble and expose the old man. The words are conclusive, well-founded and vivid, as if they were present at the time and saw and heard with their own eyes and ears. Even Zheng Dafeng was not sure. Did I really steal such and such items from so-and-so's house, or eavesdrop on a fight in the bed at such and such a night? Zheng Dafeng said for no reason, Brother Wen, have you noticed that you seem to be a different person? Wen was stunned when he heard the words carefully and was in a daze. Have it? When he thought about it carefully, he felt a little worried. Zheng Dafeng raised his eyebrows sideways, flirting with the oldest and best-looking girl in the room, and continued chatting carefully with Wen. Is it refreshing and completely different? Or has he returned to his original appearance? It's like polishing bricks and turning them into mirrors. Those who say that you cannot become a Buddha by sitting in meditation will have the opportunity to make people realize it through words. It is of little use to tell you this truth. The principle of 1 inch of time, 1 inch of gold, is said to the peasants whose face is closest to the earth, but to the cold window in the study it's different to study as a scholar. Wen Qingxin was actually not weak in talent and temperament, but he was still stunned by Zheng Daifeng's words. A certain girl in the room gritted her teeth and started to complain. The old deaf child endured and endured, turned his head and looked at the door and said in his heart, Zheng Daifeng, you and Wen are just talking carefully for free. Don't disturb the students in the room. Wen carefully put his hand on his forehead. He had no shame in staying any longer and left first. Zheng Daifeng gathered his voices as he walked and said to the girl in the room with a playful smile, although the possibility is extremely small, I still have to say if anyone bullies you, remember to tell Brother Daifeng. The woman in the room blushed and sighed softly. You're a scoundrel, you're a dirty person, you're shameless. Zheng Daifeng held the back of his head with both hands, and his shoulders swayed, up and down, swinging beside Wen Qingxin. Wen carefully asked, Brother Zheng, is it possible that you have a relationship with the woman in the house? Zheng Daifeng laughed and said, we are two frivolous sluts. Which girl would have a relationship with us because of her failure in her previous life? Wen carefully said helplessly, that's not what you said. Just scold yourself, don't take me with you. Zheng Daifeng thought to himself and said, Brother Wen, you know very well that we are very compatible. Wen carefully smiled bitterly. The only thing he knew clearly was that Xin Yuanji, who also taught boxing at Yingyu Peak, originally regarded herself as an arrogant person. Just because she was familiar with Zheng Daifeng, Xin Yuanji felt that she was an inexperienced person. A useless libertine. Wen Qingxin was very unjust, and he had no wrong thoughts towards Xin Yuanji. Zheng Daifeng thought of the embroidered tiger, and then naturally thought of playing chess and said, let's talk about a game and enjoy a little gambling. Deng Jianping followed Guizhuzhou and landed at Huaying Peak. Guizhuzhou stood outside the door and said in his heart, old deaf boy, his name is Deng Jianping. He is my master's new disciple. He will come here often to listen to classes in the future. Please give me a seat. The old deaf boy was reluctant and nodded. Guizhuzhou said, it's Xiegou's suggestion to come here to listen to the class. The old deaf child looked at Guizhuzhou. Guizhuzhou seemed to be smiling, but the old deaf child smiled awkwardly. Guizhuzhou said something before leaving, which made the old deaf child feel complicated again. It's good to think of this place not as Luapa Mountain, but as the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The old deaf man didn't say anything and sighed inwardly. The young sword cultivators who lived in the summer palace were really more skilled than the other. Deng Jianping first bowed to the person offering sacrifices, and then quickly sat down in the corner. There was no extra futon, so he sat on the floor, put a hiking stick across his knees and said quickly in his heart, listen to the teachings of your predecessors. The old deaf boy nodded. He was not young, not high level, and had average qualifications, but he was a man of etiquette. Continuing with the lecture, I have to say that preaching to an old deaf child is indeed more useful to those monks than a certain chief instructor. At least you can understand every word. On the white jade railing at the top of the mountain, Xiegou sat next to Xiaomo. Xiaomo was silent for a long time and said, you are afraid that I will reach the 14th realm. I'm also a little worried. If you don't care so much, I don't have to worry. Xiegou regained his true appearance, shook his legs, looked forward, pretended to be surprised and said with a smile, it doesn't sound like what Xiaomo would say. Who taught you? Xiaomo shook his head and said, no one teaches me, it's just what I think from my heart. Bai Jing narrowed his eyes and smiled, then I will take it seriously. Xiaomo said, it's best to take it seriously. A little girl in black, carrying a cotton bag crossbody, was returning from a patrol in the back mountains. She happened to come around the old mountain shrine temple in White Jade Square. When she saw this scene she was stunned for a moment. What should she do? Mr. Xiaoma couldn't follow her. A woman, you know? Does this count as what the book said about me being intimate with each other before the flowers and under the moon? There is no misunderstanding, right? What to do, should I tell the dog? I told Guzi, what should I do with Mr. Xiaoma? Xiaomili had an idea and thought of it. He quickly closed his eyes and walked backwards, thinking silently in his heart that he saw nothing and looked at nothing. After just a dozen or so steps, Xiaomili circled back to the back of the hall, squatted down, frowned, scratched her face hard, and began to feel worried, feeling sad for Guzi. A voice rang in my ears, Protector Zhou Mani? Xiaomi Li was startled and turned around blankly. Ha! The girl in the mink hat stretched out her finger and hissed, "Don't make any noise, I'm trying to catch someone." Xiaomi Li tilted her head and said bitterly, "Huh? It's really dark and windy tonight and the world is dangerous. It would be nice if the good mountain master was here." Xiao Mo said angrily, "Don't scare Xiaomi Li." Xiego hugged Xiaomi Li, rubbed his face and laughed, "Xiaomi Li is so generous." Xiao Mo explained softly, "Xiaomi Li, the woman you saw just now is one of Xiego's true appearance." Xiaomi Li was relieved, laughed loudly, gave a thumbs up and said in praise, "Guzi, you are really tall." Xiaomo is confused, "Guzi?" Xiego pulled Xiaomi Li and stood up, "Let's go and listen to the class. Our mountain master just accepted a disciple, and he was mistakenly accepted as a disciple over there in Ganbangbang." Xiaomi Li was a little nervous and asked carefully, "How old are you and how tall are you?" Xiego grinned and said, "Tall young man, he is a swordsman." Xiaomi Li scratched his face. Haid picked up the green bamboo stick. "Come on Guzi, let's take a look." Xiaoma smiled gently and followed the chattering girls. At the dojo teaching at Huaying Peak, as soon as Xiego arrived, there was Xiao Mo, not to mention Zhou Mili, who was enshrined as the guardian of Luolu Mountain. Old deaf children are inevitably nervous, and all the Taoist monks here are even more helpless. I heard that the mountain owner is currently in retreat at Fuyao foothills. In the entire Luapa mountain, Zhou Zongfeng is the only one who can come and go freely? In fact, the one who was most nervous was Xiaomi Li, who was sullen. Xiao Mo and the others walked to the end and took out 4 futons. As soon as Xiaomi Li sat down, he let out a long breath. Xiego sat cross-legged and waved his hand, telling the wooden man to stop being stunned and continue to preach and teach us swordsmanship. The old deaf boy had just glanced at Xiao Mo, and now he was finally able to calm down. There was another figure in green shirt at the door. The visitor just smiled and said, "Excuse me, continue teaching." The old deaf boy had a sad face. "How can you teach here if you are here?" Deng Jianpain, who was an apprentice and valued etiquette, could not compete for the second seat. She had already hurriedly wanted to give up the futon. But Qin Pingan just sat casually next to Xiaomi Li, with his hands in his sleeves and a smile on his face. The old deaf boy played a clever trick and asked tentatively, "Why don't you, Lord Yingguan, give a lecture in person and tell you the many details of the fight with the Jia Xinjiang sword cultivator?" Qin Pingan counterattacked an army. "Why don't we first elaborate on the internal fight between Huaying Peak and Yingyu Peak? Why did a group of mountain cultivators lose to martial arts practitioners?" Xiego clicked his tongue. "It's too tragic to look at, unbearable to look back on, outrageous, heartbreaking." Xiaomi Li lowered his voice and said, "Guzi, aren't you the master coach here?" Xiego sighed, "They are all willing to teach. I'm just a fill-in and don't teach much." Xiaoma had no choice but to stand up and said, "Let me explain why you lost." Su Yuanxia settled in Luolu Mountain. Xiaomili is responsible for entertaining guests and accompanying them on tours. Perhaps the person who admires this big-bearded hero the most on Luolu Mountain is the big water monster of Dumb Lake. Su Daxia can write travel notes and I happen to have a lot of landscape stories. So every morning early in the morning the little girl in black works as a doorkeeper at the door. Qin Pingan took a trip to Fuyao Island. Gukan chose Chuanjiao Mountain on the Fuyao Island side to host the sect celebration, but it was quiet and no news was leaked. Even if Gukan didn't hide her words in person last time and complained that Qin Pingan was a busy man, Qin Pingan would definitely participate no matter how busy he was. After changing his appearance, Qin Pingan arrived at the not unfamiliar Jinqi ferry in Fuyao Island. By chance he met 2 acquaintances in the bustling city. He didn't need to be sharp-eyed at all. It was really difficult to pretend not to see him. Who is the upper sect and who is the next sect? Zheng Juzhong did not make any statement and let the 2 disciples decide for themselves. Lu Qiqing smiled and replied, "It's the lower sect. After all, Fuzi is Gukan's senior brother. Gukan doesn't care about this kind of thing. Although Fuzi doesn't say anything, he still cares about it in his heart. Gukan doesn't have to do it for a little bit. The false reputation makes him feel grudge." Qin Pingan said, "You can't say it's just a false name. The difference between the 2 sects is not just a little bit different." Lu Qiqing was extremely proud and said, "Under the Baidi City Taoist tradition, there is no difference. It is impossible for Fuxi and Shangzong to control the lower sect, and Gukan and the lower sect do not need to offer anything to the upper sect." Qin Pingan said angrily, "I can't tell you this." Lu Qiqing laughed and said, "Indeed. After a long time, who can say for sure what will happen in the future? Whether there is a difference or not, I don't have to say. Lu Qiqing said, Senior Sister Han is very attentive. Before the retreat, she had already given me a sum of grain rain money. From now on, I will be in charge of you regarding selling books. Qin Pingan frowned and said, Isn't it appropriate? Lu Qiqing said angrily, Qin Pingan, what you said is unreasonable. I'm not greedy and I can't do anything to make profit from it. Besides, we have known each other for many years. What kind of person and character do I have? You're not familiar with it yet? For example, Lu Qiqing has always been responsible for taking care of Beidacheng's continuous revenue sharing from Kaiyunpu. Didn't he handle it properly? Previously, he was suppressed by the great heavenly master of Longhu Mountain and kept in Aquarius continent for thousands of years. When Lu Qiqing returned to Baidi City, he discovered that there was no one in charge of this money. It was simply a mess. But Lu Qiqing was so moved that his senior brother valued him so highly. It seemed that Baidi City would be able to function without him, but in the end it was a fly in the ointment. According to Lu Qiqing's understanding, to be relied upon, a person who is relied upon must rely on his ability. But who to value is a matter of personal preference. Lu Qiqing felt that he was someone valued by his senior brother. Besides, when has senior brother ever relied on anyone? Something that is simply not needed. The contemporary great celestial master of Longhu Mountain, Zhao Tianlai, personally came down from the mountain, brought the celestial master seal and the immortal sword, and suppressed Lu Qiqing in Aquarius continent for 1,000 years. All fools know that a person who has achieved perfection in the Ascension realm will teach a lesson to someone who is in the Jade Purity realm. Do you need to mobilize forces like this? To put it bluntly, isn't it all thanks to having a senior brother? It seems that Pavilion Master Lu always looks at problems from an unconventional way. Qin Pingan explained seriously, I heard that you are a good businessman. I am afraid that you will not care about friendship and help my senior sister to haphazardly bargain. Master Huolong said that you are quite experienced in business and besides being refreshing, you are also quite shrewd. Lu Qiqing liked to hear this kind of words. This guy was wearing a pink Taoist robe. His sleeves were swaying more and more. His face was full of joy and he exclaimed, I'm really good at judging people. Qin Pingan held it in for a long time after hearing the words. He didn't say anything. He just patted Lu Qiqing on the shoulder. He felt guilty for earning such a fool's money. Lu Qiqing smiled heartily and said, My brothers, don't say anything more. Han Xiaosa is currently in seclusion, and her senior brother Zheng Juzhong has opened a dojo for her in a secret place. It seems that if she cannot prove her ascension in one fell swoop, she will not have to go out. And she was separated to Gu Kan, and Gu Kan had no intention of giving her any important position. The previous sect celebrations of Qin Pingan's Lolu Mountain and Qingping Sword sect were already messy enough, but Gu Kan was even more careless like this. Zheng Juzhong, the authentic ancestral sect of Baidi City and the master, did not appear. Senior brother Fu Shi did not come from the barbaric world to congratulate him. He just used the flying sword method to send a message. It was not thin but it could not be called rich. Gu Kan did not invite anyone to watch the ceremony. Let's just talk about the deputy sect leader Lu Yuzhou. As the only son of Lu Jubao and Azu. Such a big thing happened but there was no sign from Liu's side. Becoming the second in command of a sect is not comparable to being a worshipper or guest in the sect's immortal mansion. Lu Qiqing suddenly clicked his tongue and said, Sure enough, you are the proud one, so I made a special trip here to wait for you. Among the bustling crowd in front, Gu Kan stood on the road and looked towards them. Once upon a time, someone started a reunion after a long absence with a slap in the face, and the one who received the slap still had a smile on his face. Qin Pingan, you are here. Zheng Qingjia noticed the clues and took action himself, killing them all. Qin Pingan was non-committal. Lu Qiqing was speechless. The Taoist fellow from Xuanhu looked delicate and charming, and her voice was soft and waxy. Unexpectedly she was so ruthless. No wonder she was brought back to Howran by her senior brother. She did have merit. Qin Pingan asked curiously, How did you convince Oriole Island Zhongsu? Old Yuanying Zhongsu, as one of the few local snakes in Shujian Lake who could compete with Jinjuan Zhejiang in the past, was independent, which made the style of Oriole Island different from other islands. Logically speaking, Zhongsu should not pay attention to Gu Kan. People with different principles should not work together. Gu Kan replied, The only way to deal with such a stubborn person is to dig deep into your heart and treat others with sincerity. Qin Pingan was too lazy to ask for details and asked, "Will he be the master in charge?" Guken nodded and said, "Zhongsu manages people, disowns relatives and has clear rewards and punishments, which is just right. Xianxia manages money. Spending and making money are her and Jin Qiqing's responsibilities. Lu Yuzhou holds the title of deputy sect leader and can manage everything. You can ignore everything. Eugene serves as the chief minister just for show and will be more leisurely. The maid Gu Lingyan has a slightly more important status. The second in command of the Jianghu lineage, serves as the chief officer of the survey department, and will also be in charge of etiquette for the time being. The rest of the people, the old people of Baidi City, also gave the official status of a certain department and the seat of the ancestral hall. The sect generally has this structure." Qin Pingan said, "At the beginning of the establishment of the sect, it is already a good start to have 3 immortals at the same time. In terms of top combat power, although you are the lower sect, you have already surpassed Fuye's upper sect. In addition to Han Xiaosa, a fairy who has ascended in seclusion and attained enlightenment. The Taoist name is Xuanhu and Jing Qingjia was given the surname Zhengjuzhong. Naturally, this female fairy from a wild background will also serve as the city lord of Jinsui City for a long time. Eugene, a ghost who has fallen into the immortal realm. As a native of Fuyao continent, Eugene belongs to revisiting his hometown and returning to his hometown in rich clothes. Don't look at Gu Kan and say that Eugene is a chief on paper. As the first person in Howren's history to almost complete a continent. Even if Eugene was thrown the idea of a unified emperor, a great talent, a great strategy and an ambitious one, he would be able to accept it. The story begins with a shabby boy in straw sandals, accompanied by a boy in blue and a girl in a pink skirt. Moreover, the mountain temple had not yet been moved at that time, and the host and guest were ambiguous. They had been close neighbors who had not interacted with each other for a long time. Guken shook his head and said, "Senior brother Fu is also secretly recruiting troops. He has never been idle in the wilderness. He is very ambitious. He probably won't accept some rotten fish and shrimps. Instead, he will deliberately reduce the number of people in the genealogy, so as to attract more monks in the upper 5 realms." Lu Qiqing was finally able to interject. "As the founding disciple of my senior brother, this status is still very attractive. In addition, Fushi himself is a promising swordsman. His temper is a bit arrogant, but as long as he is willing to eat him, those who act like this are definitely not ordinary people." Qin Pingan said, "I forgot to ask you the name of your sect." Guken said, "It's called Fuyao sect, which is rather tacky." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Liuan Academy and so many local sects and immortal mansions don't have any objections?" Lu Qiqing said without thinking, "There is a Tongya sect in Tongyi's Hao." Noticing that Qin Pingan and Guken were both looking at him, Lu Qiqing smiled awkwardly and said, "Treat me like a child." Guken continued, "What opinions can there be on the mountain? If Zheng Zhezhong's disciples founded a sect, they would be surprised if it was not called this name. What's more, there were several Fuyao sects in the history of Fuyao Island who ended up with the same name. None of them are good. I think the name is too big to catch this good fortune." One of the Fuyao sects was the leader in Izhou Mountain who was supported by Eugene when he became emperor. When the dynasty fell and the country was cut off, he couldn't pass it. Within a few days the sect was torn apart. Not long ago Eugene mentioned this matter and cried bitterly, saying that it was a sacrifice for his country. The female national preceptor who was his childhood sweetheart and confidant was so beautiful. It looks good. But I checked the files and Eugene didn't tell the truth. Guken said this and asked something with his eyes. Qin Pingan said, "I don't know anything." Lu Qiqing was puzzled and asked a riddle. Guken already knew the answer. The female swordsman Song Pin from Jinjiazu is most likely the reincarnation of that woman. That's why she was able to get the ownership of the long sword Fuyao. The reason why Eugene was willing to join the Fuyao sect was probably because of her. Guken laughed for no reason and said, "In the past, the Zhongzidu sect always dreamed of having an ascension realm sitting on the top of a mountain, and they didn't dare to expect more. Except for the divine continent of Middle Earth, if a continent can have 2 or 3 ascension, it means that it has deep luck and outstanding people. It's better now." Lu Qiqing couldn't stop laughing. If a sect wants to discuss the number of monks in the 14th realm, they can talk to Lu Qiqing for a few more words. Qin Pingan reminded, "Eat the food one bite at a time." Guken said, "Time waits for us not." Qin Pingan said, "You have a great future, why are you in a hurry?" Guken suddenly said, "I used to be ignorant and unaware of Yunba's treacherous plot on the mountain. Now that my horizons have opened up, I will never allow myself to become Xinglo in the world of Qingming. Qin Pingan was silent. Lu Qiqing was like falling into the clouds. Gu Kan said, the current imperial master of the Jinpu dynasty is a direct disciple of the Qing Palace Taibao in Liuxia continent. His name is Gao Gung. When I was discussing business with Emperor Hong, Gao Gung was sitting next to me and was very nice to me. He is polite and a little too attentive. It can be seen that Emperor Hong has great trust in this new imperial advisor. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Gao Gung spent some time in Luapa Mountain with his master Jinghao. I guess Qin Lingjun took him to Mubattle Alley. Lu Qiqing murmured in a low voice. His master, who is a master of high cultivation, is just a time-honored master in the Ascension realm. How can he compare with your master Gu Kan? This courtesy cannot be attributed to Qin Shanju. Brothers will settle the accounts clearly and return to the same place. 1 yard. Gu Kan smiled softly. Since when have Master Lu and Qin Pingan become better brothers than Jin Jian? Lu Qiqing started to act like his uncle. Gu Kan, don't smile like that, you look like a villain. Gu Kan squinted over. Oh? Qin Pingan couldn't help but laugh out loud and joked. Fellow Taoist Lu is really making a joke at the risk of his life. Gu Kan, who wanted Lu Qiqing to have a better memory, also started laughing. Gu Kan asked, you came alone? Qin Pingan said, there is also Xiaoma Xiego, but we came by night boat. Lu Qiqing mistakenly thought that he heard wrongly and asked, thank you for what? Qin Pingan said angrily, dog. Lu Qiqing laughed heartily. He was not making fun of this fresh and refined name, but he just remembered a certain saying about the Great Wall of Sword Qi, which seemed to be seen from a distance or up close. Qin Pingan smiled and said, fellow Taoist Lu has met with the second-in-command of my family. You can call her a bitch, but you don't have to see her outside. Lu Qiqing was doubtful and asked, trick me? Qin Pingan's face was full of surprise. Can you guess this? Lu Qiqing sighed. Who could have imagined that a pedantic and old-fashioned boy back then would become what he is now? Qin Pingan asked with a smile, now that everyone has achieved enlightenment and ascended, are you not in a hurry? Lu Qiqing's face was full of sorrow. Why are you not in a hurry? You are as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, and your heart is burning with anxiety. If you say you are not in a hurry, you appear to be unmotivated. In fact, Lu Qiqing was not in a hurry at all. The master came out again. Senior brothers are all in the 13th realm. Now that even the 2 nephews have founded a sect, the one person in the world who does not need to worry the least is Lu Qiqing. Lu is a person who was born to enjoy happiness. You Qin Pingan have a hard life, how can you compare with me? While walking and chatting, Lu Qiqing felt like he had forgotten something. In a mountain shop where a second-hand dealer sells talismans and spiritual weapons, the shopkeeper looked up again and glanced at the guy who was fussing around but not paying. The shopkeeper reminded, sir, the shop has rules. If you don't buy it, don't touch it. The man replied, I have money in my pocket. I will pack the items together after I have picked them out. The shopkeeper laughed angrily and said, then you should pay for it. The man said, you have to be patient when opening a business. The shopkeeper was furious. I'm here in Jinshidu, how do I do business? Do I still need you to teach me? Unexpectedly, the man said, to be honest, the entire Jinshidu is now the territory of our sect. The shopkeeper was amused. I never heard that Emperor Hong of our Jinpu dynasty has a son as old as you. The man said, is it possible that I am his father? The shopkeeper was obviously choked by these words. With such a wild approach, he must have come from a xianxia cultivator who would be eaten by wild dogs. You guessed it right, Chai Bofu was indeed a wild cultivator from Aquarius continent. He called himself Longbo, and he was a senior brother and sister to the Su family woman from Qingfeng City. It's just different now. In the past, it belonged to the immortal master genealogy. It can almost be said that Lu Qiqing has never seen such a person who can take advantage of the situation and avoid disadvantages. As long as Chai Bofu sees that the opportunity is not good, he will really have no shame at all. I have to admit that Chai Bofu is a good player no matter how bad he is or when he is good. Practice makes perfect when it comes to falling into trouble. Although my level is not high now, my foundation is solid. This time, when his colleagues congratulated Gu Kan, Lu Qiqing was extremely curious. After going back and forth between the Jindan and Nascent Soul realms so many times, when did he reach the upper 5 realms? At that time, Chai Bofu felt aggrieved, his eyes filled with resentment. I want to know too. Chai Bofu still has half a sentence. I dare not say it until I die. Please ask your senior brother for help. Lu Qiqing patted fellow Taoist Long Bo on the shoulder and told a casual lie to encourage Chai Bofu to prevent Chai Bofu from getting upset. Don't be discouraged, fellow Taoist. For the sake of friendship, I will make an exception with you and reveal the secret. In other words, my senior brother is using you to observe Taoism. Since the golden elixir and Yuanying are collectively referred to as Earth Immortals, there is naturally a great deal of knowledge between the two realms. Chai Bofu seemed to be woken up from a dream by a word, and he suddenly realized it. Tears filled his eyes. Without saying a word, he knelt down and kowtowed towards the direction of Baidi City, making a banging sound. Lu Qiqing was surprised. Could it be that he accidentally discovered the truth? In fact, Chai Bofu didn't believe it at all and felt miserable. He had just returned to the nascent soul realm a few days after leaving home, and he still hadn't covered himself with heat. Lu, you said that, what else can I do besides kowtow to Mr. Zheng and say thank you? Lu Qiqing was talking nonsense. Chai Bofu didn't believe it at all. But the fact is that Zheng Juzhong of Baidi City does have this intention. He wants to redefine the term Earth Immortal for the cultivation of Taoism in the world. On a peak of Quanjiao Mountain, the old Jianghu nunnery has become a relic. Zheng Qingjia opened a cave here as a mountain dojo outside Jinsui City. The mountains and rivers are quiet and it is a great place to escape the summer heat. Zheng Qingjia has a cold personality. Even though she has recruited a number of direct disciples, there are still not many who can truly fall into her eyes, making it difficult for her to trust the Taoist lineage. There is only one exception, Zhai Guangyun, and only this proud disciple can visit the former site of Jiangzinan. Zhai Guangyun is not very old and has not yet reached the level of nascent soul. He is unable to use his magical power to view mountains and rivers. Therefore he tried his best to see the general outline of the Golden Ferry crossing. Master Yingguan has such a good relationship with Sect Master Gu. You will definitely attend this ceremony, right? Otherwise, the brotherhood and the morality of the world will not be justified. Zheng Qingjia had a headache. Sect leader Gu did go down the mountain today, but who Gukan was going to see and who could guarantee anything? Zhai Guangyun was an admirer of the young hermit official. The last time I went to Aquarius Island to see Gu Kan, as a guest at Luapa Mountain, Zheng Qingjia shook her out of her sleeves. But she didn't dare to let her meet Qin Pingan for fear of causing complications. As long as you have never been to the wild world, you will never know the transcendent status of the young hermit official there. Especially the demon monks who have been to the vast world and returned to the wild world have made many breakthroughs on the battlefields of several continents. Now there are many young geniuses who have gradually become the backbone of the wild world. This group of demon monks, without exception, was deeply impressed by the bright red figure on the half-section of the Sword Qi Great Wall. Zhai Guangyun said, Master, Sect Master Gu seems to be a scholar. He is very skillful in handling people. Following such a person is like taking a reassurance. Zheng Qingjia made a pun and said with a smile, it does look like it. If you really regard Gu Ken as a serious scholar, you would be totally wrong. The mineral vein of Quanjiao Mountain is a treasure mountain in the literal sense. Although repeated surveys have shown that the ore has high impurities and is not suitable for casting fairy coins, and cannot become the fourth coin, after Guyu, Xiaoshu and Snowflakes. However, no one doubts that Fuyao sect, which owns Quanjiao Mountain, will not worry about money for 1,000 years. Fuyao sect and Laiyuan Academy each occupy 1/3 of the jade mine, and the latter will use the income to rebuild the dilapidated Fuyao Island. In the Jinpu dynasty, which had only been restored for a few years, the far-sighted emperor, as a local snake, secretly made a big deal with Guken, the dragon crossing the river, and first built a Jinchi tower on Luanjiaten. Cross offer with both hands, it's a free gift. Let's talk about the ownership and dividends of the mine. Anyway, a new sect soon appeared in the Jinpu dynasty. The 4 people who followed Gu Kan and settled here from Aquarius continent were the founders of that sect. Huang Lai, the former national master of Yushuan Kingdom and the immortal of Jindan realm, is more than enough to serve as the leader. In addition, Shinku Ghost Guanjing, who had just broken through and became a warrior in the Yuanying realm, and an old woman in the Yuanying realm whose pseudonym was Pulu, held important positions in the sect respectively. Fuyao continent was already suffering from a tragic war and the people's livelihood was in decline. This mountain should not be underestimated. Of course, it is the Fuyao sect is going down the mountain privately for the time being. Guken divided 1/3 of the Quanjiao Mountain jade mine into 3 parts, one to the Jinpu dynasty, one to the back mountain that made the alliance, and the Fuyao sect reserved one for itself, but it still belonged to the Jinpu dynasty in name. The Pu dynasty made a verbal agreement similar to a gentleman's covenant with Emperor Hong to avoid being caught by some Taoists at Laiyuan Academy. Before the sect ceremony had even been held, Gukan already had a private ferry, a cross-continent ferry, a city that was like a cornucopia of cash cows, and a secret descending sect. Xianxia rubbed his disciple's hair, couldn't help but remind him and said sincerely, Howren is different from the wilderness. We in the wilderness kill people without reason. Here in Howren we kill people with reason. From now on you just close the door. Cultivating Taoism well, your talents, opportunities and status in the immortal family will not be inferior to you in the slightest, but you must keep one thing in mind. Do not provoke Gu sect master casually. Remember, if Gukan kills you, master will definitely not be able to protect you. Zhai Guangyun nodded, Master, please be considerate. Disciple knows the pros and cons. Even with the verbal assurance from his beloved disciple, Xianxia was still worried that she was used to the wild customs and the freedom of Jin Suiqing. I still need to make a promise with Master that I will not meet sect leader Gu alone without authorization. Zhai Guangyun did not pretend to be coquettish and beg for mercy, nor did he pretend to swear. He just whispered, young officials can defend the city, but they can barely get out of Shujin Lake. A little ant like me, under the guidance of sect leader Gu, how can I take it lightly when dealing with people right under my nose? Xianxia had a complicated look on his face, nodded and acknowledged his disciple's promise, but reminded him sternly, don't mention this kind of thing again in the future and don't say it to anyone. Zhai Guangyun quickly agreed. On the coast of the sea there are steep cliffs. This place is still thousands of miles away from the submersible vein of Chuanjiao Mountain entering the sea. Two genuine men of Taoism met here. The one who looks like a rich man is the head of the Lu family in Azu, who is known as the richest man in Howren. There is also a thin old man with a green bag on his back. He has multiple identities. He is both the head Taoist priest of Chuanjiao Mountain and Lu Miao, the Zong of Qianglin. Lu Jubao's attitude was very interesting. As for his son and Gu Kan, the newly promoted 14th realm monk in Aijo, he said he knew it without saying anything. Lu Yuzhou did not invite his father to the celebration, so Lu Jubao just pretended that nothing happened. Lu Jubao laughed and said, a dove has taken over a magpie's nest like this. Isn't the old owner upset when he sees it? Wei Shi said, anyway, since Yuzhou is the second in command, let's treat it as a waste and keep it to others. As an elder, I gave him a congratulatory gift. Lu Jubao said, the gift is not thin. Wei Shi didn't think this matter was worth wasting any more words on, so he started to change the topic with a look of great regret on his face. I originally thought that the two of us would go to Jiluzu together to settle the matter, but my wish was given up. Unfortunately, it's too late. If Huolong Jinren didn't succeed in joining the Wei, everything would be easy to say. When the two of them got there, they invited those sword cultivators who always had their eyes on them and sat down to discuss business. Just to buy back the word, north. Two people from the 14th realm of Aijo came to Jiluzu together. If the ones responsible for entertaining the guests are only the Ascension Realm Master Fire Dragon and Sword Cultivator Baishang, then from now on, it will really be just Jiluzu. Lu Jubao has been obsessed with getting back the word, north, for a long time. Lu Jubao didn't want to talk more about this topic and asked, why did you suddenly change your mind and want to take the initiative to go to the wilderness? Wei Shi did not hide anything and said, I went to see Zhang Fenghai who came out of the Yanxia cave. I heard that he broke away from the Baiyujing genealogy and raised a mountain. He should not be underestimated. Lu Jubao smiled and said, all Taoist friends are planning to do business with Qingming Tianxia? Zhang Fenghai and his group of Taoist priests are currently traveling through the wilderness. There was no publicity about this matter, but the monks at the top of the mountain still heard about it. Wei Shi neither admitted nor denied the matter. Lu Jubao said, how many portraits do you think will be hung in the ancestral hall at the main peak of Chuanjiao Mountain? Should we hang a portrait of Zheng Juzhong alone, or add a portrait of our founder Qin Qinglu? This problem can be big or small. Wei Shi said, it seems like Gukan can do it even if he hangs one or two or doesn't hang at all. Lu Jubao smiled and said, well see. Wei Shi said, on the top of the hill where the old site of Jiangzhen Temple is located, two masters arrived. Lu Jubao said, fellow Taoists must learn from me and not even look at it, lest it be regarded as a question of swordsmanship. Wei Shi smiled and said, after all, it is the location of my old monastery. If I take a few peeks it must not be a big problem. As they were speaking, Lu Jubao and Wei Shi spotted a girl in a mink hat on the top of Chuanjiao Mountain. stretching out her fingers and bending them a few times. "You new 14ers who haven't reached the age of 14 yet, don't act like uncles to me." Wei Shi praised. As expected of Bai Jing, he really has a keen sense of consciousness. But when he turned around again, Wei Shi found that Lu Jubao had disappeared. Wei Shi shook his head, smiled casually and shaped like a blue crane. He performed the water-preventing technique and instantly submerged into the sea to return to the ruins, heading straight to the wild wilderness. On the other side of the mountain, xianxia recognized the identity of the young man with the yellow hat, green shoes and green bamboo staff. Xianxia quickly pulled his disciple Zhai Guangyun to kneel down together. She put her hands on the ground, touched her forehead to the back of her hands 3 times, and repeated one sentence each time she kowtowed. Xianxia of Jingqiqing, Taoist name Xuanhu, pays homage to the ancestor. Xiaomo said calmly, "A little bit of Taoist inheritance, kowtow 3 times is enough. From now on, you and I will be treated as fellow Taoists." Xianxia still did not stand up, but just raised his head and said, "The patriarch does not recognize the disciples as descendants of the Taoist lineage, but the disciples never dare to deny that the ancestor is above them." Xiaomo said indifferently, "It's up to you." Xianxia stood up and bowed to the girl in the mink hat. "I have met Senior Bai Jing." Xiego sighed and complained, "You're so stupid you call me Guzi. How dare Xianxia make such a mistake? Jinsui City has always been under the jurisdiction of the Swinging River, and the new owner of the Swinging River, Fei Fei, the great demon of the throne, seems to be the disciple of the sword immortal Bai Jing in terms of seniority." Zhai Guangyun stood up in a daze and blurted out, probably because of his blessing, "Zhai Guangyun, a disciple of the Jingqiqing lineage, has met the grandma of the ancestor." Xiaomo was helpless. Xianxia looked nervous. Bai Jing's ancient deeds, one after another, all have something to do with moodiness. For example, in the legend, there was an extremely dangerous situation in which someone was trapped in a siege. Led by 2 big monsters, and more than 100 monks participated in the ambush. The 2 people who had been planning to ascend to the realm for a long time were still killed and injured by Bai Jing. As for the other ants, they were all cut into pieces with a sword. Bai Jing passed the sword and liked it. Split. The seriously injured female sword cultivator showed her true body and feasted on the corpses on the battlefield without wasting any of them. Even for a great demon of the same age as Zhu Yan, when future generations mentioned Bai Jing, they would always call him a fierce bitch. At this moment, Xiego put his hands on his hips and kept a straight face. He was very happy. Oh, Xiaonir's mouth is so sweet. It's your turn to eat the wedding candy." Wow, haha, Xianxia is not bad at recruiting disciples. It's so pleasing to the eye. Xiego said, "Well, the little girl can often go to Luapa Mountain in the future. By the way, what is your name?" Zhai Guangyun timidly said, "To tell you the story of my grandma, my name is Zhai Guangyun, and I have always admired Mr. Ying Guan." Xiego lamented. After hearing the second half of the sentence, she immediately changed her tune, "Then you'd better not go to Luo Mountain. For the time being, I am only the second-ranking worshipper, and my official title cannot match that of the Mountain Master's wife. The Mountain Master has many good things, but he is afraid of Ning Yao, which needs to be discussed." Xiao Mo regretted a little. He shouldn't have been dragged here by her. Xiego originally planned to imitate Jing Qing's ironclad character, and even if he lost his official position, he would still say a few words of loyalty and harsh words. He advised the Mountain Master, "You are marrying a wife to ask for your wife. Why are you afraid of what Ning Yao will do to her?" However, Xiao Mo advised her not to say anything and just listen to Xiao Mo. Together with Yu Feng, we arrived at Chuanjiao Mountain. Chen Pingan only briefly visited the scenery along Zushan Mountain, but did not visit the other peaks. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Lu Qiqing had no choice but to take the initiative to ask where he was staying, and Gukan asked him to use the floor. Lu Yuzhou is not on the mountain at the moment. He has been in Jingqiqing recently, learning in detail the weaving process of a robe. Tonight is a night of beautiful flowers and full moon, and people are in high spirits on happy occasions. Tomorrow morning is the sect ceremony. A young sect leader in his 30s can be said to have achieved success and great success. Gukan sat alone on the railing of the observation deck, placing his hands gently on his knees, patting him again and again. The maid Gu Lingyan knocked on the door symbolically and came over, leaning against the door with her arms folded across her chest, looking at the back that looked a little lonely. Is it because Lord Yin Guan didn't come here to reminisce and chat, but instead went to drink and chat with old Grandmaster Shin, so he was sulking? Gukan didn't say anything. She was bored and the toes of her embroidered shoes poked at the floor. Hey, before going down the mountain, the young master specifically told the food and beverage department not to prepare anything. I guess you want Shinpingan to cook in person? Result? The result is the current situation. Gu Lingyan shut up obediently. Of course she didn't dare to rub salt into Gu Kan's wounds. She would really be resented, especially for matters related to Shinpingan. Gu Kan said to himself, high mountains are easy to pass, but flat roads are the most difficult. Seeing that he was finally no longer mute, Gu Lingyan agreed, daily skills are very important. The truth is this. If you want to become a Taoist master of Ijo, now is the beginning. When he was young, he was captured by Master Lu Jimao of Zhejiang and was taken to Shujian Lake, where he officially embarked on the path of spiritual practice. In Shujian Lake, where murderous intentions abound and people's hearts are full of ghosts, they rely on a nascent soul realm water dragon to act violently and stop killing with killing. The most annoying thing is the word rules. By chance he followed Zheng Juzhong to Baidi City and became a master and apprentice, which was refreshing. Break the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm, kill the inner demons and successfully reach the upper 5 realms. From now on there will be no world. At the age of 30, Yamashita was already a founder and one of the few young sect masters in the history of Howran. Gu Kan didn't even turn his head and said, "Stop drinking the northwest wind with me. Go and do your own thing." Gu Lingyan smiled like a flower. Isn't it the business of a maid to serve the young master well? Gu Kan said, I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense to you. Gu Lingyan didn't take it seriously, gave him a blessing and left quietly. Gu Kan looked into the distance. Looking back on life it seems like a dream. It was dawn and there was still at least an hour before the ceremony. The first person to arrive at the square outside the Patriarch Hall was an outsider. When we got there was nothing to do, so the man in blue shirt wearing cloth shoes took a slow walk in the square paved with white jade. If I remember correctly, at the previous opening ceremony of the Qingping Sword sect, the man who was the head of the sect was always the last one to arrive. Over at Gu Kan's residence, Gu Lingyan knocked on the door and helped his young master wash his face and wipe his hands, help him arrange his clothes carefully, put on his jade crown and pinned his gold hairpin. When she mentioned this, Gu Kan didn't seem surprised. He just picked up the handkerchief again and wiped his face. Then a smile spread on his face and he said, he has always been like this here. In the dusk, on the country road, there was a child in green clothes with his sleeves rolled down, strutting all the way through the village, stepping on the bluestone road to the village school by the stream. Dogs were barking on the roadside, so the boy in Xingyi immediately stood up and confronted them with a fist move to ask for directions. In the end, they ran away with their tails between their legs. The boy in green suddenly stood upright, threw down his sleeves and crackled, "Fighting with an old man? What a coward." Some villagers saw this scene and shook their heads. There are fools in every village. I wonder which village this child came from. Approaching the school where class had just ended, the boy in green shouted at the top of his voice, Brother Zhou, Brother Zhou." Xianxia walked out of the school with a few books under his arm, raised his arm and waved. "Here, here." Chen Lingjun walked quickly towards Chief Zhou. "But we can't neglect our brother Zhou and teach in the countryside instead of the mountain master. He is lonely so we have to take a look at him. What's more, Zhao Shusha and Ningji are both here. As a half-senior, Chen Lingjun always has to teach them some principles on how to behave in the world. They are all good advice that cannot be taught in books and cannot be bought with money." Zhao Shusha and Ningji were busy in the kitchen. Chen Lingjun went to the door and ordered a few dishes, saying that it wouldn't be too much trouble and they could make do with it, but the local wine would be sufficient. Zhao Shusha said with a smile that it was okay. At the dinner table, during this visit, Chen Lingjun also brought a new piece of news, which made Chief Zhou have mixed feelings and even drank. Luolu Mountain does not have its own landscape newspaper, nor does it have the idea of starting the Mirror Flower, Water Moon, but the Qingping Sword sect will soon have its first Mirror Flower, Water Moon, and will soon release the news. After learning about this, Jiang Shangzhen complained that the lower sect was not honest in doing things. How could it be reasonable for the eldest brother to marry his second brother first without getting married? At the same time, he said considerately that it seemed that the Chui sect leader was really short of money now and blamed himself for not taking care of him. When you arrive, go back and say hello to Jiang's Cloud Cave Blessed Land. Jiang Shangzhen and Chen Lingjun clinked their wine bowls together, stretched out their hands to rub their chins and couldn't help but ask, "Is the news reliable? Aren't you just chasing rumors?" Chen Lingjun said angrily, "Do you think the information I heard from Xiamili is unreliable?" Jiang Xianxia nodded and said, "That's absolutely true." Jiang Xianxia asked, "Does the mountain master know this?" Qin Lingjun shook his head and said, "That's not clear. The master of the mountain has been in retreat at the Fiolu dojo recently. No one has been seen except Xiaomi Li." Jiang Xianxia asked curiously, "In this mirror, who shows up and who is the abbot, who is responsible for warming up and who is calming down? What are you going to say? It has to be a bit of a gimmick, right? Most of the handsome men are here in Luoshan. It seems that only me De Jiangxian can make up the numbers there?" Chen Lingjun's cheeks bulged from eating and he said vaguely, "That's not clear. I'll ask Xiao Mili to continue to inquire about the news later." Yes, Shusha is good at cooking. I give you a thumbs up." Seeing the boy in green giving him a thumbs up, Zhao Shusha smiled and nodded and said, "Keep up the good work." Chen Lingjun moved his thumb towards Ningji again. "Ningji is doing a good job now. You can open a restaurant in Huaihuang County in the future. I have many friends on the road, so I guarantee a prosperous business." Ningji grinned. In fact, Cui Dongshan specially sent many letters with the same content to the peaks of Luolu Mountain, asking Xiao Mili to help deliver them to avoid being misunderstood. "I sincerely ask all members of Shangzong's family to support me. Those who are rich support a financial field, and those who have no money support a personal field. For example, those who are currently practicing martial arts and Taoism at Huayin Peak and Inyu Peak and Diaoyu Mountain don't have much money in their pockets, so they help shout a few times to Jinghua Shueyu. And over there at Piyun Mountain, don't forget to say hello, distant relatives. It is not as good as being close neighbors and one family does not speak the same language." Of course Xiao Mili received these letters, but as soon as he ran to Fuyao Lu to tell the mountain master, Qin Pingan suppressed him. In order not to embarrass Xiao Mili, Qin Pingan had to write a reply in his own hand to ask Cui Zongzhu, "Look for others to take care of you, and don't harm your own people." Qin Lingjun remembered the old chef's words for no reason, and laughed until his stomach hurt. No one's money comes from strong winds. It was blown by the strong wind. Zhao Shuxia and Ningji were both used to this and didn't find it strange. Qin Lingjun finally suppressed his laughter. "Ningji, do you want me to teach you how to box?" Ningji quickly waved his hand and declined the matter. Without drinking much, Zhao Shuxia and Ningji cleared the dishes. Qin Lingjun and Jiang Xiangjun sat on the bamboo chairs under the eaves. Qin Lingjun leaned over there and burped a few times comfortably. Zhao Shuxia was going to the rented house in the next village. Ningji said he would go back later and stay here. Zhao chose a small path under the tree and walked silently. Ningji carried a bamboo chair outside the house and asked Mr. Zhou if he wanted to sit on the wicker chair. Jiang Xiangjun smiled and nodded, and the child moved the wicker chair out. Qin Lingjun praised, "Ningji, you are a child with lively eyes. You will have great potential in the future." Ningji smiled shyly. Qin Lingjun started laughing to himself again, and Jiang Xiangjun asked what the happy thing was. A few days ago at the banquet table when everyone was having hot pot for a late-night snack, the old cook said, "Brother Zheng is the second most popular person in the world." Zheng Dafeng, who is as shameless as the roof, was uncharacteristically smiling like a mimosa. "Chief Zhou, do you understand what it means?" Hearing this, Jiang Xiangjun smiled knowingly. "It seems that Mr. Zhu really can't bear it anymore. You always treat his place as a canteen. It's really too much." Qin Lingjun groaned, "What should we do? I originally thought that when you come back I would ask the old cook to prepare a banquet and have a good meal to help you catch the wind and wash away the dust." Jiang Xiangjun said, "Too much is too much, but eating and drinking are still okay." Understanding the situation, they all raised their hands and gave high fives. Ning Jian sat aside quietly, not saying anything, just listening and having a good time. Jiang Xiangjun has actually discovered that Ning Ji has an ability to fall asleep when he wants to. Very common? Very unusual. If you practice Taoism on the mountain, this is a very profound spiritual cultivation skill. Ning Ji actually only told his senior brother Zhao Shuxia about this matter, but didn't mention it to his master. It wasn't that the young man had any reservations, he just felt that there was no need to talk about such a trivial matter. In addition, whenever Ningji wants to wake up, he will be on time, just like the bells and drums in the temple, so accurate, just like the sundial over there in the grain drying field. It is exactly the same. As for Zhao Shuxia, who is learning boxing, he is Qin Pingan's beloved disciple. His character is naturally very good, and he has a sense of propriety that is very similar to Qin Pingan's. It's hard to say whether he is born or nurtured. Jiang Xiangjun smiled and asked, "Ningji, compared with your master, which one is better at teaching?" The child said sincerely, Mr. Zhou is more patient, but Master is more powerful. Jiang Shangzhen said in confusion. Ningji, this statement is contradictory. Are you saying the opposite? Qin Lingjun touched Ningjia's head and saw that he was a very smart child, but his little head was so clueless. He was much worse than himself. Ningji's eyes were firm, he shook his head and said, "That's right." The child hesitated for a moment and became less determined. "Maybe I feel wrong." Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "Yes, you are right." Qin Lingjun only found it unbelievable. "How is it possible, Chief Zhou, that you are more patient than the mountain master?" I'm laughing so hard. It's clear that my mountain master teaches better and has better patience. Ningji was confused. Can he talk like this? Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "Because I don't really care about teaching and everyone in the school, so I will appear to be very patient." Ningjia's eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, this is the feeling I couldn't describe before. Mr. Zhou's heart is only in books. Master teaches and his heart is outside the books. Jiang Shangzhen nodded. Yes. He is worthy of being the proud disciple who allows Qin Pingan to impart the knowledge of talismans with confidence. Jiang Shangzhen changed the subject. Although I am a teacher now, in fact when I was young I also lived in the world. Ningji, do you know what the world is? Qin Lingjun's eyes widened when he heard this. Chief Zhou really wouldn't mislead his disciples? Ningji hesitated for a moment and shook his head. The child was not that yearning for the so-called jianghu. Jiang Shangzhen did not continue talking. Qin Lingjun talked a lot about many topics, but Ningji couldn't understand them anyway. In the night, Ningji stood up, said goodbye and left, putting the bamboo chair back into the house. Jiang Shangzhen didn't get up, but Qin Lingjun said that they would walk through the night together, and they hadn't been to the next village yet. Jiang Shangzhen looked at the two of them and they were actually about the same size. Luolu Mountain is really a good place for learning. Qin Lingjun's collection of passers-by and by Xian's hero spectrum. There are also several boxes of account books that Pei Qian has saved, stacks of books that Nuanshu records daily expenses, Xiaomili's diary that only writes about the weather, and Kong House files that record all the people in the mountains. Even now Xiego has written a travel diary about mountains and rivers. Not long after, Qin Lingjun wandered back and said, Ningji comes from a poor family. Brother Zhou, please take more care of him. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and nodded, easy to say. Qin Lingjun yawned, leaning back on the chair and crossing his legs. Jiang Shangzhen asked curiously, I heard that the sister named Xuanhu came to the mountains as a guest last time. Did you see her? How is she doing? Qin Lingjun picked his nose, flicked it casually and said casually, I've seen it before, I can't remember clearly. I guess he looks average. Jiang Shangzhen looked shocked, pretending to be impressed and asked, Brother Jingqing, are all the women you have met in this life immortals? Qin Lingjun rolled his eyes and was too lazy to say anything nonsense. Jiang Shangzhen rarely recalls the past, probably because he almost never regrets anything. Why is it that the world is so vast, and among the sea of people, I met her walking towards me alone, and after just one glance, I will never forget her again. Jiang Shangzhen lay on the wicker chair, imitating the old cook in the mountains, folding his hands on his abdomen and said slowly, I can give her anything she wants, but there is one thing I can't give. She just wants to. I want something like this. Qin Lingjun sat on a small bamboo chair and whispered, The matchmaker is getting married? Jiang Shangzhen said, Sincerely, I only love one person and grow old together. Qin Lingjun curled his lips and said, In the final analysis, it's just a matter of romantic nature. It's easy to fall in love with someone and you can't help it. That woman is not kind to others. She owes you in her previous life. Jiang Shangzhen was silent. If it were left to Jade Guizhong and Yunku Blessed Land, who would dare to speak so bluntly? Jiang Shangzhen would beat the out of him. Qin Lingjun said, It's my brother. That's what I said. Don't be surprised. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and waved his hand, telling him not to think too much. If he didn't really fall in love, why would he talk about it? His own son wouldn't be able to hear it. After a moment of silence, Jiang Shangzhen asked, Jingqing, do you think you look like Qin Pingan? Qin Lingjun was stunned. What kind of is this? How can I be a little bit similar to the mountain master? As long as there are one or two similarities, the mountain master will not be what he is today. I can't follow the northwest wind. Can you still eat delicious food, drink spicy food, have plenty of food and wine every day like now, and when you get bored on the mountain you can go down the mountain for a walk to digest? Putting their arms around each other, inviting them to have a morning drink and supper. Su Daxia was invited up the mountain by the owner of the mountain. In just a short time he said a lot of these stupid things. Mr. Zhu, listen to me, do you think they are right? Zhu Lian nodded. That's not quite right. The little has no taboos in what he says. It's all things that even our mountain masters dare not say. Xuanhu looked sad and clenched his hands hard. She didn't even dare to say this to the mountain owner. I had no choice but to turn to the most considerate Mr. Zhu for help. Zhu Lian smiled softly and said, but having said that, it is not appropriate to say what the mountain master dare not say, but when Jing Qing said it, it is appropriate and couldn't be more appropriate. Xuanhu raised his head, his eyes brightened suddenly, but he was still doubtful and still clenched his hands. Zhu Lian explained, Qin Lingjun, this idiot is a jianghu man after all. He happens to be in the same group as Sudashia so they can talk to each other. Sudashia has a big heart. The more heartless Qin Lingjun is, the less hurtful his words are. On the contrary, it's a good thing to be able to relieve Sudaxia's heart and turn him into a relieved person. Xuanhu thought about these words carefully, his face softened, and he nodded slightly. It seemed like this? She asked, Mr. Zhu, did Qin Lingjun do this on purpose? Zhu Lian picked up the kitchen knife again. He doesn't have the brains. He found that Xuanhu didn't speak, he just looked at himself. Zhu Lian smiled and said, hey. Xuanhu thanked him, his eyebrows were curved, his expression was soft, and he continued to choose vegetables. Just as the appetizers were being served, a kid in Xingyi wandered to the door and poked his head around. Old cook, stupid girl, what are you busy with? What's going on? Hurry up and make another plate of pickled cucumbers to relieve the hangover. Mr. Mountain Master, if you're not here, I have to shoulder the burden of entertaining guests. I just called Brother Su here and I have to give him a good meal. There is no brotherhood at the wine table, we only show off on the boxing road. Zhu Lian glanced at Xuanhuan and asked, are you a fool? Xuanhu nodded, he was a fool. Ningji returned to his residence in the next village before, opened and bolted the door gently, tiptoed to his own house and started to sleep. Zhao, who was sleeping under the tree in another room, closed his eyes and felt relieved. His breathing gradually became longer and longer. Ningji had a strange dream. A swordsman in green shirt, who seemed to be the gentleman, was holding a hiking stick. He spent countless years and never resisted the wind, walking across the broken mountains and rivers of a continent. And in the wild world, a young demon cultivator who had just climbed a mountain to practice Taoism accidentally entered a secret place, like a reading place, with the name Hauran? Eranzhai. The young monk was extremely nervous. Who was so reckless that he dared to give such a name to his study in the wild world? Inexplicably breaking into this place, going around in circles and never being allowed to go out. The young monk had no choice but to start looking through books in the study room. He put down the commercial books with ordinary contents, and did the homework of breathing and breathing. I was drowsy and had a dream. In a vast battlefield, two armies faced each other. The strength of both sides was incalculable. On one side was the demon tribe, on the other side was the Hauran cavalry. The battle situation finally began to turn one-sided. Right here, a golden armored as tall as a mountain came to the center of the battlefield and slammed into the ground, as if all kinds of luck had gathered into one body, blocking the attack of the demon army. On the shoulders of the huge god, stood a man in red robe, as small as a mustard seed and with a vague figure like thousands of silk threads. He carried a sword on his back and held a knife in both hands. Qin Pingan joins hands with Tongis Hao to return the favor to the wilderness. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.